Welcome, dear listener, to a journey into shadows. Tonight, we descend into the forgotten heart of Silver City, a place where history bleeds into myth, and the living share their world with the whispers of the departed. Silver City may sparkle in the daylight, its streets alive with art, music, and stories of pioneers. But when night falls, the air thickens with something unseen. Footsteps echo where no one walks. Doors creak in empty halls. The silence itself seems to breathe. What makes Silver City so unforgettable are not only its triumphs and tragedies, but the restless spirits that linger, tethered to the town's bones. From old hotels to deserted mines, from shadowed cemeteries to theaters, where curtains never truly fall, this city holds 25 of the most haunting legends that refuse to be buried. So, dim the lights. Let your imagination follow the flicker of a lantern in the dark. For within these tales, Silver City will reveal its haunted soul. The Hotel of Eternal Guests stands in the heart of Silver City, a place where history and hauntings intertwine so tightly that one cannot separate the two. Built in the late 1800s, the Grand Hotel was once the pride of the booming mining town. Its towering windows and gilded chandeliers promised elegance, a sanctuary for wealthy travelers who came to strike fortune in the silver veins beneath the earth. But with fortune also came tragedy, and as decades passed, the hotel gathered more than just dust in its corridors, gathered whispers of the dead, a reputation for shadows that never left, and the chilling name it bears today. The Hotel of Eternal Guests. Visitors who arrive now, drawn by both curiosity and dread, often speak of strange disturbances that begin as soon as they set foot inside. The first sensation is not always visual, but atmospheric, a heaviness in the air, as though the very walls are alive and listening. Guests checking in for a night sometimes remark on a faint chill that lingers no matter the season, a draft that seems to seep from nowhere and everywhere at once. The staff, though polite, rarely address these feelings directly, but if pressed, they admit the stories are true enough. The hotel is not merely a building of brick and stone. It is a host to those who never truly departed. One of the most common experiences is the sound of knocks at impossible hours. Guests report being jolted awake by 3 sharp raps at their doors, as though someone is summoning them. But when they muster the courage to open it, the hallway beyond stretches empty, silent, and still. The carpets are thick, muffling footsteps, and yet no one is ever there. Some visitors try to laugh it off as a prank, but others feel a bone-deep certainty that something unseen waits on the other side, testing whether the living will answer. The lobby, with its massive mirrors that line the walls, has long been a focal point of eerie encounters. Locals whisper about the eternal guests, figures in outdated suits and gowns who stroll casually past the mirrors, yet cast no reflection. The cleaning staff, often the first to arrive before dawn, describe the unnerving sight of a shadowy group moving across the polished floor only to vanish mid-stride. At times, a guest will pause to adjust their collar in the mirror and notice someone standing directly behind them, dressed as if they belonged to another century. When they turn, there is only empty space. Many believe these lingering spirits are tied to the city's mining history. Silver City was once a place of great promise, but for every miner who struck it rich, countless more perished in collapses, accidents, or illness. Lodging at the Grand Hotel was a luxury most of them could never afford. Yet stories suggest that in death they found their way inside. They walk its gilded hallways not as paying patrons, but as eternal residents, still yearning for the comfort and splendor denied them in life. Travelers and miners, gamblers and wanderers all, said to have checked in long after their hearts had stopped beating. One tale often repeated among the townsfolk is that of a miner named Elias who lost his life in a cave-in in 1892. Records show his body was never recovered. Yet guests claim a weary figure sometimes appears near the bar, covered in gray dust, as though he has just clawed his way free from the earth. He orders a drink in a voice too faint to hear, and then dissolves into nothing before the glass is poured. Another story tells of a young woman in a violet dress, thought to have been a traveler, who succumbed to illness during her stay. Guests awaken to find her seated at the foot of their beds, staring with mournful eyes, as though waiting for a carriage that will never arrive. Staff members, particularly those who have worked there for decades, have grown accustomed to these strange occurrences. One former concierge once confessed that he kept a small bell on the counter, not to summon help, but to ring when the air grew too still. He said the sound seemed to scatter the unseen company, if only for a moment. Housekeepers talk of neatly folded towels becoming undone the second they turn away, or of beds that look freshly slept in, though the rooms had remained unoccupied. Some even refuse to enter certain suites alone, claiming they feel hands brush their shoulders or hear faint breathing behind their ears, despite or perhaps because of its haunted reputation. The hotel remains a fascination for tourists and paranormal enthusiasts. Ghost hunters flock to it, their equipment buzzing with strange readings, their recordings filled with unexplained voices. Many leave with more questions than answers. But nearly all agree on one thing. The building feels alive with presence. Its silence deeper than ordinary silence. Its shadows heavier than ordinary shadows. It is a place where history has not ended but continues to echo, where the line between guest and ghost blurs. What gives the hotel its lasting power is not merely the spectacle of fear, but the sense of longing that permeates its halls. These are not spirits that rage or lash out. They wander, they linger, they remind the living of lives cut short and dreams left unfinished. Some visitors describe feeling sorrow rather than terror, as though sharing in the restless yearning of those trapped between worlds. Others insist that once you spend a night there, a part of you never fully leaves. Drawn back in dreams and memories to the flickering chandeliers and endless corridors, the Hotel of Eternal Guests endures as both landmark and legend, a monument to Silver City's past and a dwelling place for those who refuse to depart it. To walk its halls is to walk among shadows, to feel the presence of countless souls who checked in long ago and never found their way out. For some, it is a chilling tale best avoided. For others, it is an irresistible invitation to step inside and listen closely to the knocks in the night, the whispers in the mirrors, and the eternal guests who will forever call the Grand Hotel their home. The abandoned mine shafts of Silver City are more than relics of a bygone industry. They are wounds carved deep into the earth, scars that have never fully healed. Long ago, these tunnels were alive with the clamor of ambition. Men came with shovels and lanterns, their faces streaked with dust and sweat, driven by the promise of silver and copper that seemed endless beneath the rugged hills. The city above pulsed with prosperity, its saloons, hotels, and bustling streets all fed by the wealth ripped from the earth below. Yet as swiftly as fortunes rose, they also fell, and with them came stories of tragedy that refused to be buried. Now the mines stand sealed and silent, but those who linger near them swear that the echoes of the past have never faded. On quiet nights, the air near the old entrances grows unnaturally still, as though the earth itself holds its breath. Locals say, if you stand close enough, you can hear the faintest of sounds drifting up from the depths, phantom pickaxes striking rock, steady and rhythmic, like a ghostly work crew that never laid down their tools. Sometimes voices can be heard, indistinct and overlapping, men shouting warnings, calling for help, or simply talking as though unaware their time in this world has ended. Those who dismiss it as imagination rarely return twice, for the strange acoustics of the sealed shafts seem to seep into the bones, rattling something primal within. Storms bring the most unsettling activity. When thunder rolls across the mountains and lightning cuts the sky, the mines seem to stir. Witnesses claim to see faint lantern lights flickering deep underground, moving steadily as though carried by unseen hands. These lights drift in patterns too deliberate to be tricks of reflection. They appear in clusters, weaving through the darkness like processions of miners still navigating their way through endless tunnels. Some say the lights are the souls of men trapped in cave-ins, forever searching for the exit they never found. Others whisper that the storm awakens something more ancient, as though the earth itself remembers the greed that tore it open and answers back with restless shadows. The mines of Silver City were notorious for their danger. Records tell of collapses that buried entire crews alive, of gas explosions that sent fire racing through narrow shafts, of men who simply vanished into uncharted tunnels and were never seen again. Families mourned but rarely received bodies to bury. It is said the ground beneath Silver City holds more bones than treasure, and the restless spirits of those left behind have little peace. Tales circulate of miners who swore they heard whispers urging them deeper, only to be lost to sudden falls or poisoned air. Even in life, the mines seemed hungry, always demanding more. One of the most persistent legends is that of a foreman named Donovan, who worked tirelessly to push his men harder and deeper into the mountains. His obsession with striking a rich vein blinded him to the dangers, and in 1903, a section of the shaft collapsed, burying him and several workers. Locals insist Donovan still haunts the tunnels, his ghostly presence marked by the sound of heavy boots pacing just out of sight. Some claim to hear his voice barking orders in the dark, the tone harsh and commanding, though no one dares follow the sound for fear of joining him beneath the rock. Another story tells of lantern bearers, spectral figures seen at the mine's mouth during heavy fog. These silhouettes, shrouded in mist, hold their dim lights aloft but never reveal faces. They stand motionless until approached, then dissolve into the air, leaving behind only the faint scent of smoke and the sensation of being watched. Children growing up in Silver City are often warned never to chase strange lights near the old shafts, for many believe they are lures, tricks designed to draw the living into the earth's hungry mouth. Even in daylight, the area holds an uneasy quiet. Birds do not linger near the entrances, and animals avoid the slopes. Hikers report sudden drops in temperature, the air turning icy even beneath the summer sun. Cameras brought near the mines often malfunction, their batteries drained in minutes, as though something unseen feeds upon their energy. Paranormal investigators who have ventured close leave with recordings filled with static and faint voices, fragmented words that seem to rise from the depths, cries of help, echoes of names, or long, low groans that stretch far beyond what any human throat could produce. The people of Silver City live with the mines as part of their history, yet they treat them with quiet reverence, as though acknowledging a cemetery. Few dare to trespass near them after dark, for the stories are too many and too consistent to dismiss. Some say the spirits remain because their work was unfinished, their hands never free of the rock and dust. Others believe they linger in anger, bound to the tunnels by the greed and negligence that cost them their lives. A smaller number whisper of something older than miners, a deeper force tied to the earth itself, restless after being disturbed. What is undeniable is that the mines are never truly silent. Those who have stood at the sealed entrances describe a subtle hum beneath the wind, a vibration like the earth whispering secrets to itself. Whether it is the settling of stone or something beyond understanding, no one can say. Yet those who hear it never forget, and many leave convinced that the mines are not abandoned at all, only occupied by a different kind of resident. The abandoned mine shafts of Silver City endure as dark reminders of the cost of ambition. Where once men clawed for wealth, now only shadows remain, keeping watch in the labyrinths below. On stormy nights, when lantern lights flicker deep underground and phantom tools ring against stone, it is easy to believe the miners never truly left. They dig still, not for silver or copper, but for release, bound forever to the depths they once carved, eternal workers in tunnels where the light of day will never shine again. In the heart of Silver City stands the old theater, a grand structure of carved stone and velvet drapes, a place once known for glittering premieres and the laughter of audiences dressed in their finest. Today, it holds a different reputation, one that has little to do with the art of performance and everything to do with the whispers that drift through its halls. They call it the Theater of Shadows, and those who know its history claim that while the stage lights may dim, the performances inside never truly end. For over a century, the theater has been a gathering place for actors, dreamers, and townsfolks seeking escape in the magic of performance. Yet, just as long, it has been home to stories that unsettle even the bravest stagehands. The most persistent tale centers on a tall, solitary figure who appears in a balcony during rehearsals and late-night performances. He sits motionless, his form draped in shadow, watching every movement on stage with a gaze that can be felt but never fully seen. Ushers confirm they see him night after night, yet no ticket is ever sold in his name, no ledger holds his entry, and when checked, the balcony is always empty. Still, the presence returns, as faithful as any patron, applauding silently from a seat reserved only for the dead. Actors who perform beneath his gaze often describe a prickling sensation along their skin, a pressure in the air that makes them stumble over lines or forget choreography. They've practiced for weeks. Some insist they can feel his attention guiding them, as if he is more director than audience, pushing them toward some unseen perfection. There are even whispers that he chooses his favorite actors, who rise quickly to acclaim, only to falter in tragic accidents or sudden illness, as though the shadowed figure gives and takes in equal measure. The stage itself seems alive with his influence. Props move on their own, sliding across the boards as though nudged by unseen hands. Curtains sway when no draft is present, heavy velvet shifting as if brushed by someone pacing behind them. During quiet rehearsals, the faint sound of applause has been heard drifting through the empty auditorium, a polite but chilling rhythm that fades into silence before anyone can pinpoint its source. Some nights, the applause is joined by murmurs, dozens of indistinct voices, as though an entire invisible audience has returned to witness performances that no longer exist. Stagehands, who often spend long hours alone in the building, speak with particular unease about the wings of the stage. One recounts seeing a chair move 3 full feet across the floor, scraping wood against wood, while no one else was present. Another swears that while adjusting a spotlight, he caught sight of a tall man reflected in the lens glass. When he turned, no one stood there. Most unnerving of all is the story of an actress who, after a performance, walked to the front of the stage to bow. She later confessed in trembling tones that she had felt a cold hand guiding her from behind the curtain, pressing gently on her back as though ushering her forward into the glow of the footlights. Silver City locals speculate endlessly about the identity of the shadowed figure. Some claim he was once the theater's first director, a man obsessed with perfection, whose relentless demands pushed performers past their limits until his sudden death backstage. Others believe he was a patron who perished during a fire in the early 1900s, trapped in the very balcony where his ghost is still seen. Another version tells of an actor who dreamed of fame but collapsed from illness on opening night, his unfulfilled ambition binding him forever to the place where he hoped to shine. Regardless of who he was, the theater remains his stage, and the living, knowingly or not, still perform for him. Even outside the balcony sightings, the theater brims with unnerving phenomena. Lights flicker during rehearsals, plunging the cast into sudden darkness. Costumes left neatly on racks are found scattered across the floor. Scripts vanish only to reappear days later in impossible places, tucked beneath chairs or left at the center of the stage, as if delivered by invisible hands. Musicians practicing in the pit sometimes hear phantom notes joining their own, an unseen accompanist weaving discord into their melodies. Yet the most disturbing experiences are reserved for those who linger alone after midnight. A handful of janitors have resigned after claiming they saw shadows moving across the stage with no actors present, shapes that mimic rehearsals long past. They describe hearing the rise and fall of voices reciting lines from forgotten plays, the laughter of audiences who no longer exist, and the chilling creak of footsteps pacing the boards. More than one has reported that while locking up, they glanced back to see the curtains part slightly, as though someone inside was watching them leave. Despite its unsettling reputation, the Theater of Shadows continues to operate, its allure only strengthened by its legends. Audiences still flock to performances, though many cast nervous glances at the balcony. Some even claim to have seen the shadowed figure during shows, a presence that blends into the darkness until noticed too late. Actors whisper prayers before stepping on stage, hoping to avoid his gaze, while stagehands carry charms and tokens to protect themselves from his influence. For some, the haunting is a curse. For others, it is proof that the theater holds a kind of eternal magic, where the boundary between art and afterlife has dissolved. The theater of shadows endures as both monument and mystery, a place where stories live long after their tellers have gone. To perform upon its stage is to join a cast that spans centuries, watched by an audience that never disperses. Whether the shadowed figure is a lost soul, a jealous spirit, or something more ancient, no one can say, but his presence lingers, guiding actors with cold hands, applauding in empty air, and reminding all who enter that in Silver City, the curtain never truly falls. On the outskirts of Silver City, hidden behind overgrown brush and crooked trees, lies a cemetery time itself seems to have abandoned. Weathered headstones lean at odd angles, their inscriptions worn smooth by wind and rain until the names are no longer legible. Some markers are nothing more than fragments of stone, half swallowed by moss and earth. This is the resting place of the city's earliest settlers. Though many of their graves were left unmarked, their stories erased before they could ever be told. The locals call it the Forgotten Cemetery, and to wander its grounds is to feel the weight of centuries pressing down with each step. The first thing visitors notice is the silence. Unlike other graveyards, there is little birdsong, little rustling of small animals in the brush. The quiet here feels deliberate, heavy, as though nature itself has grown cautious. Many who step into the cemetery report a sensation of suffocating sadness, a sorrow that clings to the air and seeps into the chest. Some describe it as grief that isn't theirs, as if the earth itself resents being disturbed, mourning for the souls that never found peace. It is said that when the settlers arrived in Silver City, death claimed them as quickly as the wilderness did. Illness, accidents, and violence left many without proper burials. In those early days, the cemetery grew hastily, graves dug in shallow earth, markers carved crudely or not at all. Over time, as the city prospered and built grander cemeteries, this one was neglected. Families moved away or died out, leaving the dead beneath the weeds and the creeping shadows. Abandonment gave way to whispers, and whispers gave way to fear. Those who dared to visit speak of strange phenomena that cannot be explained. Some hear weeping carried on the breeze, mournful cries that drift between the gravestones, yet never grow closer or fade away. Others have described catching sight of figures among the graves, pale forms standing perfectly still, watching with hollow eyes. When approached, these shapes vanish like smoke, leaving only the impression of cold air where they once stood. More than one witness has sworn they saw lantern-like glows weaving between the trees, lights too dim to be mistaken for modern lamps, yet moving with purpose, as though borne by unseen hands. One chilling tale, often retold around Silver City, concerns a hiker who stumbled upon the cemetery during an autumn storm. The ground was slick with mud, pressed into the soil, as though someone had passed just moments before. He followed them cautiously, curiosity outweighing his unease, until they led him to an unmarked patch of ground. There, the footprints simply ended, as though their maker had sunk straight into the earth. The hiker left quickly, but he claimed that as he hurried away, he could still feel eyes watching from the unmarked grave. Stories like this are not rare. Silver City residents warn each other not to linger too long among the forgotten stones. One woman, walking her dog near the cemetery's edge, reported that her animal froze in place, growling at something she could not see. The dog's hackles rose, its eyes locked on the center of the graveyard, and no amount of coaxing could move it forward. Finally, she picked it up and carried it away. But she swears she heard footsteps following her through the brush until she reached the road. Children dare each other to sneak inside at night, though few ever stay long. They describe a thick mist that clings only to the cemetery grounds, obscuring the headstones until they seem to shift and move. Some say they heard voices murmuring their names, while others claim to have felt icy hands brush against their skin. More than one child has run screaming from the place, their courage shattered by shadows that reached out to them. Parents scold them afterward, but deep down, many believe the children truly saw something. The Forgotten Cemetery has earned its name not because it is empty of presence, but because it feels abandoned by the living and claimed entirely by the dead. Paranormal investigators who have braved its grounds return with unsettling evidence, recordings filled with low sobs, whispers that speak fragmented words, and photographs where faint outlines of figures stand beside the stones. Some even capture shapes kneeling at unmarked graves, as if in eternal mourning. Despite the stories, the cemetery remains untouched, slowly decaying into the earth. Attempts to restore it have failed, with workers reporting tools going missing, machines breaking down, or sudden illnesses that force them to leave the project unfinished. It is as though the dead themselves resist any effort to disturb their rest, preferring to remain hidden, shrouded in weeds and shadows. For Silver City, the cemetery serves as both reminder and warning. It reminds them of the fragility of the lives that built the town, of settlers who came seeking hope but found only hardship, and it warns them that some places are not meant for the living. The grief that lingers there is not passive. It reaches out, it clings, it whispers to all who enter. Those who leave often describe carrying with them a heaviness that lasts for days, as though the sorrow followed them home. The forgotten cemetery lies waiting, a place where time has dissolved and memory has rotted away. To walk its grounds is to tread among spirits who never left, whose names are lost, yet whose presence is undeniable. The leaning stones and unmarked graves tell no stories, but the air tells plenty. Of weeping, of watching, of unfinished farewells. And in the silence of Silver City's outskirts, one truth remains: this cemetery may be forgotten by the living, but it will never be empty. On the edge of Silver City stands the old jailhouse, a relic of rougher times when the frontier was still untamed, and justice was as harsh as the desert sun. Its stone walls are cracked, its iron bars eaten through with rust, yet the building remains intact, a brooding monument to the city's darker past. The cells are empty now, doors hanging open, dust settling in corners where men once huddled in despair. To look at it from the outside, one might believe it is nothing more than an abandoned ruin. But those who step inside insist it feels anything but vacant. The air within the jailhouse carries a heaviness, thick with echoes of the lives once trapped there. Visitors often describe the sound of rattling chains coming from nowhere, clinks and scrapes that reverberate down the narrow corridors. Groans of despair float through the air, deep and mournful, as if men long dead still cry out in frustration. Sometimes, sharper sounds cut through the gloom-angry shouts that seem to rise from the very stone itself. Curses spat by prisoners who never made peace with their confinement. The jail may stand empty, but it is far from silent. During its years of operation, the jail was a place of grim reputation. Outlaws, murderers, and desperate men filled its cells, many awaiting trial, others simply waiting for death. Records speak of epidemics sweeping through the jail, sickness cutting down prisoners before justice could. Violence was a constant companion. Fights between inmates, assaults on guards, and suicides in dark corners. Some men drew their last breaths in those cells, their final moments steeped in bitterness and rage. It is said their unrest lingers still, staining the very stones of the jailhouse with sorrow and fury. Among the most chilling legends tied to the jail is that of the phantom sheriff. Locals swear that a spectral lawman still patrols the corridors, carrying out his duty long after his own death. Witnesses describe the heavy sound of boots clicking against the floor, steady and purposeful, pacing through the building as though on endless rounds. The smell of tobacco smoke often precedes him, curling faintly through the air, even when no cigarette or pipe is present. Some claim to have glimpsed his figure at the end of the hallway, broad-shouldered and stern, his hand resting on a holster. But when approached, he fades into nothing, leaving only the lingering odor of smoke and the uneasy sense of being judged. For those who have spent time inside, the experience is rarely forgotten. As he walked past the cells, he heard voices rising and falling, muttering angrily in tones he could not make out. When he turned to look, the corridor stretched empty, but the sound did not stop. It followed him until he fled the building, only to realize the murmurs still echoed faintly in his ears hours later. Another account comes from a group of paranormal investigators who entered with cameras and recorders, hoping to capture evidence of the jail's reputation. Their footage showed doors creaking shut on their own, shadows shifting against the walls when no one stood nearby, and chains swinging lightly as though tugged by unseen hands. On one recording, a low growl can be heard, followed by a man's angry shout demanding, "Get out!" The team left shaken, convinced they had disturbed something best left alone. Stories also tell of cold spots that drift through the jail, sudden drops in temperature so sharp that breath turns to mist. Some visitors have claimed to feel unseen hands grip their arms or tug at their clothing. A few have walked into cells only to be overwhelmed by sudden waves of despair so intense they were driven to tears. Locals believe these emotions are remnants of the prisoner's suffering, replaying endlessly in the air like scars that never fade. Not all spirits in the jailhouse are thought to be prisoners. There are whispers of a woman's presence, though no records suggest women were ever confined there. Her sobs have been heard echoing faintly, her shadow glimpsed flitting past barred windows. Some speculate she may have been a grieving wife or mother who lingered long after her loved one perished behind the walls. Others believe she is drawn to the sorrow that saturates the jail, a restless soul mourning not just one life, but all of them. Despite its ominous reputation, the old jailhouse draws curious visitors year after year. Historians see it as a piece of Silver City's legacy, a reminder of its lawless beginnings. Ghost hunters come chasing the thrill of proof, armed with recorders, cameras, and devices that measure invisible energies. Tourists often leave pale and unsettled, swearing they felt the air grow too heavy, that whispers followed them into the daylight. The building's decay has not diminished its presence. If anything, it has made the shadows inside deeper, the silence heavier, the hauntings more profound. The people of Silver City approach the jailhouse with a mix of reverence and unease. It is not simply a ruin, not just a monument to history. It is a place where the past still breathes, where chains rattle without cause and voices of the condemned echo through time. The phantom sheriff still patrols, boots ringing against stone, eyes unseen yet unmistakably present. The prisoners remain restless, their anger and sorrow refusing to die with them. To step inside the old jailhouse is to step into a world where justice and despair collided, where human suffering left marks that walls and bars still carry. It is a place where silence is deceptive, where every sound might be the voice of the dead. And though its cells stand empty, Silver City knows the jailhouse will never truly be vacant, for its most infamous inmates remain eternal, serving sentences in shadows that will never end. Silver Creek Bridge, stretching over dark waters on the road into Silver City, is no ordinary crossing. Though the structure itself is unremarkable, aged stone supports, weathered planks, and a railing patched more than once, it carries with it one of the town's most famous legends. For decades, travelers have whispered of a figure who lingers there, a pale woman in a flowing gown, known to locals as the Lady in White. Drivers who cross the bridge at night tell remarkably similar tales. In the glow of headlights, she can be seen standing at the edge of the bridge, her hair loose and streaming in the wind, her gown rippling like water around her feet. Some say she gazes toward the town, others that she stares down into the black depths below. Just as often, she appears not at the edge, but directly in the roadway, her sudden presence forcing drivers to swerve violently, tires screeching on the asphalt. By the time the car comes to a halt, she is gone, dissolving into mist that clings low across the bridge. The legend traces back to a tragic story, one woven into the very foundation of Silver City's folklore. According to local belief, the Lady in White was once a young bride-to-be who met her death on her wedding day. Some versions say her carriage overturned on the bridge, casting her into the creek's rushing waters below. Others claim she was struck by a runaway horse while hurrying to meet her groom. Still others tell of darker betrayal love, who abandoned her, leaving her to wander in despair until fate claimed her life. Whatever the details, her final steps were taken on the bridge, and her restless spirit has lingered there ever since. The first written accounts date back to the 1930s, when motorists began reporting strange sightings during late-night drives. Newspapers at the time dismissed the stories as tricks of fog and imagination, yet the number of reports grew steadily. A patrol officer once claimed he nearly hit a woman standing in the middle of the bridge. He swore she looked directly at him as he slammed the brakes, only to vanish before his eyes. Shaken, he walked the length of the bridge with a lantern, but found no trace, no footprints, no ripples in the water, nothing at all. What makes the tale more chilling is the consistency of the encounters. Witnesses describe her gown as bright and flowing, often said to resemble a wedding dress. Her face is pale, luminous in the dark, with features blurred like smoke. And always, she disappears just as quickly as she comes. Some drivers report feeling a sudden drop in temperature when she appears, as though the night itself exhales frost. Others swear they hear soft weeping carried on the wind, or catch the faintest whisper of a name they do not recognize. Over time, the legend evolved into ritual. Locals claim that if you stop your car on the bridge at midnight and call out, the lady in white will come to your window. Accounts differ on what happens next. Some say she simply gazes in with sorrowful eyes before fading into mist. Others insist she leans close, her hand pressing against a glass, leaving behind a chill that lingers for hours. A few even warn that if you meet her gaze too long, misfortune follows. Cars that break down, accidents on the road, or nights filled with relentless dreams of drowning. Despite the danger, thrill seekers from surrounding towns often come to test the legend. Groups of teenagers park on the bridge, laughing nervously as they chant her name into the darkness. Sometimes nothing happens. Other times, fog curls over the water, headlights dim inexplicably, or strange shapes flicker at the edge of vision. A handful of these visitors claim to have seen her clearly, her white form rising from the mist at the railing before vanishing into the trees. They leave shaken, their bravado gone, swearing never to return. Not all encounters end harmlessly. Local folklore recalls several accidents on or near the bridge, cars swerving to avoid what drivers insisted was a woman standing in the road. Tire marks veer across the pavement, sometimes ending at the railing where vehicles crashed into the creek below. Whether these tragedies were caused by reckless driving or something more supernatural is still debated. But the stories fuel belief that the lady in white is not merely a vision but a force capable of shaping fate. The atmosphere of Silver Creek Bridge lends itself to the legend. At night, fog rolls low across the water, curling between the trees and swallowing sound. The creek below moves silently most of the year, but during storms it swells and churns, black and restless. The bridge creaks with the weight of passing cars, its timbers groaning like voices too faint to understand. For many, simply walking its length after dark is enough to stir unease. Every shadow suggesting the pale figure might step out from the mist at any moment. For Silver City, the lady in white has become both caution and symbol. She is a reminder of tragedy, of lives cut short and vows never fulfilled. Parents warn young drivers not to speed across the bridge at night, lest they meet her gaze too suddenly. Couples whisper her story as they drive through the dark, clutching hands tighter as they cross. And though skeptics dismiss her as a trick of headlights and fog, even they admit the bridge carries a peculiar weight, as though steeped in sorrow too deep to forget. Silver Creek Bridge remains what it has always been, a crossing point. For some, it is a simple road into town. For others, it is a threshold between the living and the dead, where a bride lost to time still waits in her gown of white, searching endlessly for the future she was denied. And for those who encounter her in the beam of their headlights, the legend ceases to be just a story. It becomes a memory, etched in fear, of the woman who watches the road and vanishes with the mist. Silver City's old library stands as a grand relic of another time, with its towering stone facade, arched windows, and ivy curling up its sides. The building looks more like a cathedral than a house of books. For more than a century, it has served as a sanctuary of knowledge, drawing in students, historians, and wanderers alike. Yet, as the years passed, It became known not only as a place of learning, but also as a place of whispers, a domain where the past refuses to stay silent. Those who venture into the library after dusk, when the sun's last rays slip from the stained glass windows, often speak of a strange presence that awakens with the shadows. Late-night researchers, their lamps burning low, have reported hushed voices circling the reading rooms. The whispers drift from aisle to aisle, never distinct enough to make out words, yet loud enough to unsettle. Some describe them as sounding like debates, hurried arguments, or urgent instructions. Others insist they are prayers or chants, repeated in tones both pleading and commanding. What unnerves them most is that these voices come from nowhere and everywhere at once. The library's staff are well aware of its reputation. Over the years, they have seen books fall from shelves without any hand to touch them, as if plucked by unseen readers. They have watched loose pages turn slowly, one after the other, guided by invisible fingers. On quiet mornings, some claim to arrive and find open tomes set neatly on tables, as though someone had been reading through the night and simply walked away before dawn. The air in certain corners feels heavy, as if full of expectation, and even the most skeptical admit the library holds an energy unlike any other place in Silver City. Local historians believe this energy may have roots in the building's forgotten past. Before it became the town's public library, the structure served a different purpose. Records suggest that in the late 1800s, it was a private hall, one rumored to be the meeting place of a secret society. The group's members, drawn from Silver City's most influential citizens, gathered in secrecy to exchange ideas, share discoveries, and protect knowledge they deemed too dangerous for the wider world. Some accounts suggest they dealt in esoteric texts, maps of abandoned mines, and writings brought from faraway lands. When the hall was eventually converted into a library, many of these works disappeared from official record. Whether they were hidden, destroyed, or absorbed into the shelves remains a matter of speculation. Those who believe in the supernatural say the society never truly left. They whisper that its members linger on, restless spirits, who remain bound to their meeting place, desperate to guard their knowledge even beyond death. It is said that the hushed voices heard at night are echoes of their eternal debates, endlessly repeating arguments no living ear can comprehend. Among the most chilling accounts is that of a graduate student who stayed late one stormy night to finish his research. As thunder rattled the windows and rain pounded the roof, he began hearing faint whispers weaving through the air. At first, he dismissed them as drafts rustling the pages, but the sound grew louder, circling the table where he worked. Then, a book fell from the highest shelf, landing with a heavy thud at his feet. When he stooped to pick it up, he found its pages already open to a passage describing burial rituals and the preservation of secrets. He fled the library without finishing his work, and though he later returned by day, he never again set foot there after dark. Another tale comes from a librarian who swore she saw a man in old-fashioned clothing standing at the end of an aisle. He held a book in his hands, scanning its pages with intense focus. She assumed he was a researcher, until she noticed that his clothing was decades out of date and that his reflection was absent from the glass case nearby. When she approached, the figure looked up, his eyes dark and hollow, before dissolving into thin air. The book he had been holding clattered to the ground, yet when she bent to pick it up, she found its pages entirely blank. For those brave enough to explore the library at night, the whispers are the most consistent phenomenon. They rise and fall like the swell of conversation, sometimes breaking into what seems like laughter, sometimes sinking into a mournful hum. A few claim the voices have called their names, soft and insistent, luring them deeper into the stacks. Some even report that when they follow, they find themselves standing before locked doors in the basement doors that supposedly lead to archives sealed off decades ago. The sealed archives are, in themselves, a source of speculation. Few are permitted to enter, and those who do return with strange stories. They speak of dust so thick it clings like cobwebs, of shelves lined with volumes that crumble at the touch, and of a silence so heavy it feels alive. Some believe these rooms hold the remnants of the society's secret texts. books that continue to draw the attention of their long-dead keepers. By day, the library remains a hub of study and quiet thought, its sunlight-filled rooms offering comfort to all who enter. But by night, when the lamps flicker and shadows lengthen, the building seems to shift. The air grows colder, the aisles stretch longer, and the sense of unseen company becomes undeniable. The people of Silver City avoid lingering there after hours, for the whispers are not always content to remain in the background. The legend of the Whispering Library has woven itself into the identity of Silver City. Students dare each other to spend nights within its walls, emerging pale and shaken by experiences they struggle to explain. Visitors come not only for the books, but to feel the atmosphere of mystery that surrounds the place. And while skeptics dismiss the whispers as imagination, drafts, or the creaking of old timbers, the accounts continue to accumulate too many, too similar, to ignore. The old library remains a treasure trove of knowledge, yes, but also a vault of secrets. And whether one believes in spirits or not, one cannot help but feel, standing in its quiet halls, that unseen eyes are watching, unseen voices waiting to be heard. The knowledge they guard is locked not just in books, but in the very air itself, whispering endlessly to those who dare to listen. Copper Alley is a narrow stretch of road that cuts along the outskirts of Silver City, where broken stone walls and rusting machinery mark the ruins of an old smelting facility. Once, this was the beating heart of the mining industry, where carts of ore rattled down tracks and furnaces glowed through the night. Now it lies silent, its structures crumbling into the earth, the air thick with the scent of rust and dust. Yet for all its silence, the alley is not empty. Travelers passing through have told of a figure that appears among the ruins, a shadowy miner who pushes a cart down the forgotten road, only to vanish into darkness. The story of the shadow miner is one of Silver City's most persistent legends, rooted in tragedy. According to local lore, more than a century ago, when the mines were still rich with copper and silver, a worker met his end in a violent accident. The man had been hauling ore carts late into the night, the weight of his load bearing down on the unstable track. Something gave way, a wheel slipped, a rail broke, and the cart overturned, crushing him beneath its iron bulk. His death was not quick, nor merciful. Some say his cries echoed into the night, unanswered, while others claim he was already dead when his fellow miners found him, his body mangled beneath the twisted cart. The accident was soon forgotten by the company, just another casualty in the relentless push for profit. But the town remembered, and so did the miner himself. Reports of his ghost began not long after the smelting facility shut down. Passers-by, walking along Copper Alley, described hearing the low creak of wheels before they ever saw him, the sound drifting out of the darkness like an echo from another time. Then the figure would emerge, hunched, soot-covered, a man-shaped shadow pushing a heavy cart before him. His movements were slow and burdened, as though the weight he carried in life has followed him into death. Approaching him never ended well. Witnesses say that when they drew near, the miner would turn his head, revealing nothing but a hollow mask of shadow where his face should be. Then, before their eyes, he would melt into the air, the cart dissolving with him, leaving only the lingering sound of unseen wheels. One of the earliest accounts comes from a night watchman hired to guard the abandoned smelting site in the 1920s. He told of hearing the rhythmic groan of metal wheels echoing along the alley. When he turned his lantern toward the sound, the beam caught a hunched man, covered in soot, pushing an ore cart along the cracked ground. The watchman shouted, thinking it was a vagrant scavenging the ruins, but the figure gave no reply. Instead, it simply continued onward until the light of the lantern flickered and the miner dissolved into darkness. The watchman quit his post soon after, refusing to return no matter the pay. More recent stories are eerily similar. Drivers passing through the alley on late-night routes report catching a glimpse of movement in their headlights, a bent figure pushing something heavy across the road. When they slow down to avoid hitting him, he vanishes, though the sound of grinding wheels lingers in the air, chasing their cars long after they've left the ruins behind. Some claim to have found fresh grooves in the dirt where no wheels should be, as though something heavy had been dragged across the earth only moments before. For the residents of Silver City, the Shadow Miner has become more than a story. He is a symbol of the countless lives lost to the mines. Men whose labor and suffering built the prosperity of the town, but who were forgotten once their usefulness ended. The miner is said to embody that endless toil pushing his cart through eternity, his spirit chained to the work that killed him. Yet, like all legends, there are darker variations. Some say the Shadow Miner is not merely a restless ghost, but a warning. Those who see him too clearly, who follow the sound of his cart too far, risk sharing his fate. There are tales of wanderers found injured or unconscious in the alley. A few even whisper of people who vanished altogether, last seen walking toward the smelting ruins. Drawn by the faint creak of phantom wheels, the atmosphere of Copper Alley does little to dispel such fears. At night, the road is swallowed by shadows, the skeletal remains of machinery looming like blackened sentinels. The wind weaves through broken beams, carrying with it groans that could be mistaken for voices. Rusted oil carts still sit half buried in the earth, their wheels locked in place, yet some visitors swear they have heard them shift in the dark, as if pushed by unseen hands. Even in daylight, the ruins feel uneasy, the silence too deep, too expectant, as though something just out of sight waits for the sun to set. Skeptics dismiss the legend as imagination, fueled by the eerie setting and the history of mining accidents in the region. They say the creak of wheels is nothing more than rusted metal shifting in the wind, and the figure in the dark a trick of the eyes. But those who have stood in Copper Alley at night, who have felt the chill when the cart's wheels begin to groan, do not so easily forget. They speak of a presence that feels heavy, sorrowful, and inescapable, as though the ground itself remembers the miner's death. The Shadow Miner remains one of Silver City's most enduring ghosts, his endless labor echoing through the ruins of industry long gone. For some, he is a story to frighten children, a tale told around firesides to explain the strange noises in the night. But for others, he is all too real, the figure who appears on the roadside, bent beneath his burden, his cart creaking into the silence, a reminder that not all who built the city found rest in their graves. Copper Alley may have been abandoned, its furnaces cold and its tracks buried, but the miner's work continues. His shadow moves forever down the narrow road, pushing his load into the darkness. Unseen wheels grinding out a dirge for the forgotten dead. And if you should hear the creak of a cart behind you on that lonely stretch, think twice before looking back, for the Shadow Miner does not welcome company. At the center of Silver City rises the old clock tower, its silhouette cutting sharply against the sky. For decades, its bells rang out over the town, marking hours with a precision that citizens came to trust. But time moves forward, and the clock tower fell into disrepair. Its mechanisms rusted, its hands frozen in mid-afternoon, and the great bells that once marked every hour were silenced, or so everyone thought. For years, the tower seemed empty, an architectural relic, a relic that drew curious glances, but little attention. Yet, on certain stormy nights, when clouds choke the moon and wind rattles the shutters of old buildings, the town awakens to a sound it has not heard in decades. The tolling of the bells. The sound is slow, deliberate, impossibly loud, yet carrying a hollow resonance that seems to seep into the bones of those who hear it. Windows vibrate, doors shudder on their hinges, and the streets below are cast in shadows, flickering with lightning. Those who hear the toll describe an immediate dread, a gnawing sensation that something terrible has occurred or is about to occur. Some report feeling their hearts pound violently, their steps slowing as if invisible hands pushed them to the ground. Others have experienced visions in the middle of the ringing. Funeral processions marching down the old streets, pallbearers carrying coffins shrouded in black cloth, and townsfolk dressed in mourning, their faces blank and hollow. These visions are vivid, almost tangible, leaving a lasting impression on those unfortunate enough to witness them. Historians and locals alike claim the clock tower is more than a timepiece. It is a marker of the city's darkest moments. During Silver City's earliest years, violence was common. Gunfights erupted in the streets over disputes over land, wealth, and grudges that seemed trivial to outsiders. Fires raged through neighborhoods, leaving behind charred ruins and bodies. Epidemics claimed children and elders alike, sweeping through the fledgling town with merciless speed. Many believe the tower's bells were present at these events, ringing to call attention, mourn the dead, or signal danger. In death, those who perished in these tragedies are said to remain tied to the tolling, their sorrow and rage vibrating through the bell's metal. Several witnesses recall nights when the storm arrived unannounced and the bells began tolling, without human intervention. One such account comes from a man walking home after closing his shop. As he rounded the square, the first deep chime rolled over the rooftops. At once, the streets seemed to stretch unnaturally long, shadows pooling into unnatural shapes. He saw a line of figures moving solemnly past the old courthouse, men and women he did not recognize, all in mourning attire, carrying a coffin draped in black. Terrified, he fled the square, but the echoes of the bells followed him into the alleyways, the mourners' procession replaying in his mind long after he reached home. Another account comes from a young couple who had parked near the clock tower during a storm, hoping to wait out the rain. As lightning illuminated the square, the tolls began. The couple watched in horror as the vision of a funeral unfolded. Horse-drawn carriages, pallbearers, and mourners streaming down streets that no longer existed, all moving in perfect, eerie silence, except for the tolling that seemed to synchronize with each step of the procession. They swear that at one point, the figures looked directly at them, their faces empty yet filled with a sorrow that clawed at the heart. When the last bell tolled, the figures vanished, leaving only puddles and fallen leaves on the wet cobblestones. The locals have long interpreted the tolling as a warning, a spectral reminder of lives lost and deeds left unresolved. Some elders claim the clock tower tolls for individuals who are about to die, an omen meant to alert the town to impending tragedy. Others believe it is a collective mourning, a call to remember the countless souls claimed by the city's violent past. Either way, no one dismisses the sound lightly. Residents tell their children to stay indoors when storms rise over the city, warning that the tolling can haunt those unprepared, bringing visions and feelings they cannot shake. Interestingly, attempts to repair or restart the old mechanisms of the clock tower have failed. Engineers report that gears shift on their own, and that parts appear to wear down overnight, as if used by invisible hands. Some claim the hands of the clock occasionally move backward during stormy nights, ticking counter to time itself before freezing once more. Those who try to climb the tower after hearing the tolls swear that the higher they ascend, the heavier the air becomes, as though each floor absorbs more grief than the last. Despite the fear, the clock tower remains a central landmark. Its silhouette dominates the skyline, a reminder of history and the persistence of memory. Even tourists, drawn by tales of hauntings, pause to photograph it during storms, cameras picking up strange light distortions and faint figures in the bell chamber. For residents, the tolling has become a part of the city's identity, a grim accompaniment to the stories of Silver City's founding, stories of fire, disease, and relentless ambition. The clock tower's toll serves as a bridge between the living and the dead, a reminder that history is not merely in books or stone but in sound, sensation, and the lingering presence of those who never found peace. Each chime on a stormy night carries more than echoes through the streets. It carries the weight of grief, warning, and memory. And though the bells remain silent most nights, when they toll again, the citizens of Silver City remember what cannot be forgotten: the lives lost, the tragedies endured, and the shadows of the past that still walk the streets when lightning strikes and the wind whispers through the square. To hear the clock tower toll is to feel history strike, a reminder that even in a modern city, the past has a way of insisting on its presence. And as long as storms rage above Silver City, the bells may yet sound, calling out across time, a ghostly measure of sorrow that no living soul can ignore. On the outskirts of Silver City lie the ruins of what was once a bustling orphanage. The building's skeletal remains are draped in ivy, the charred stones blackened by flames that swept through the structure decades ago. The fire, swift and merciless, claimed the lives of dozens of children and staff, leaving behind nothing but ash, grief, and a lingering sense of sorrow that seems to cling to the ruins, even now. Despite the passage of time, the orphanage is far from abandoned in spirit. Visitors report hearing faint cries drifting through the ivy-clad walls, the sound of small voices calling out, urgent and pleading. Some swear the cries are interspersed with the echoes of laughter, a fleeting reminder of lives cut tragically short. On quiet days, the wind moving through the ruins can sound like children running across the broken floors, though no footsteps appear in the dust. Others have smelt smoke in the air, even on clear sunny days. The scent a ghostly reminder of the fire that destroyed the building. The ruins' eerie reputation has made it a place most people avoid after dusk. Those who wander too close report an almost physical heaviness in the air, a suffocating grief that seems to press down on the shoulders and settle deep into the chest. Translucent shapes standing among the crumbled walls, or glowing orbs hovering near charred doorways. Others have seen tiny handprints appear in ash along the stone foundations, only to vanish moments later, as if invisible children had reached out to touch the living world before retreating into the shadows. The tragedy of the fire is well documented, though much about it remains mysterious. On that fateful night, the flames spread faster than anyone could have anticipated. Windows shattered in the heat, walls buckled under the fire's weight, and the few who tried to rescue the children were unable to reach all the rooms in time. The fire's origin remains unclear. Some say it was an accident caused by a faulty stove, while others whisper of something more sinister, of a spark born from anger or vengeance. Regardless of its cause, the orphanage became a tomb, and its residents were never fully mourned, leaving their grief to be recorded only in the blackened rubble and in the memories of the few who survived. Stories of ghostly encounters at the orphanage began almost immediately after the fire. A man who worked nearby described walking past the ruins years later and hearing the sound of footsteps on stairs that no longer existed. He claimed he looked into the open doorway and saw the faint outline of a child, its face pressed to the broken frame, staring out at the world with eyes wide in silent plea. When he blinked, the figure was gone, leaving only a lingering sense of unease and a cold draft that seemed to pass straight through him. Another account comes from a group of teenagers who dared to explore the ruins at night. As they climbed over the rubble, one of them claimed to feel a small hand grasp her own. She turned quickly, but no one was there. Moments later, all of them heard soft, desperate cries coming from beneath the ivy-covered walls, voices so full of anguish that it made their stomachs twist. They ran from the ruins, some tripping over stones and broken wood in their panic, and none of them returned. Their account became part of the lore, a warning to those who might underestimate the orphanage's lingering presence. Even staff who maintain the surrounding grounds have encountered strange occurrences. Tools left on the ground are sometimes moved overnight in patterns that mimic the paths children would take from room to room. Doors, long unhinged, have been found closed in the morning. Some workers report hearing laughter or the sound of small feet running along the ruins' edges, only to discover the area empty when they investigate. The phenomenon is so consistent that few who work there alone at dusk feel comfortable continuing their duties, often leaving before nightfall. The ruins themselves reflect the sorrow embedded in the site. Ivy climbs up charred walls, twisting through the gaps and cracks as though attempting to reclaim the building for life. Broken beams lean precariously against walls, shadows stretching like long fingers across the ground. Ash still coats the foundations, a thin layer that seems to record the passage of time but not the memories it holds. On certain nights, visitors report that the ash appears disturbed, as though tiny hands have pressed against it, leaving patterns too small to belong to anyone living. Local legends warn that the orphanage is a place where grief lingers longer than anywhere else in Silver City. Some say that children remain unable to move on because their lives ended too abruptly, and their sorrow too great to leave behind. Others believe that the spirits of the staff linger as well, trapped in the ruins by guilt or unfinished duty. their forms merging with the ash and stone to create a presence that is both protective and mournful. Despite or perhaps because of its haunted reputation, the ruins draw those intrigued by the paranormal, as well as those wishing to honor forgotten lives. Candles are sometimes left at the edges of the site, small offerings that burn briefly in the wind. Visitors speak softly, often whispering prayers or words of comfort, as if acknowledging that the orphanage is not empty but full of watching eyes. Those who approach with respect claim they feel a change in the air, a brief weight lifted, a quiet acknowledgement from unseen residents. The orphanage ruins remain one of Silver City's most tragic and haunted locations. Its charred foundation, cloaked in ivy and shadow, stands as a monument to lost childhoods and unfinished stories. To enter its boundaries is to confront grief that refuses to leave, to walk among echoes of laughter and cries that have lingered for decades. And though few dare to linger past sunset, the ruins continue to breathe memory, holding the past in its ashes, whispering to those willing or unlucky enough to listen. Even today, on quiet days, a visitor may step softly through the rubble and feel an unseen hand brush theirs, or hear a faint laugh that fades before it can be fully recognized. The orphanage speaks not with words, but with presence, and for those who sense it, the memory of lives lost in fire and the weight of sorrow that endures cannot be ignored. On the edge of Silver City's old downtown district stands the charred remains of a saloon that was once the heart of the town's nightlife. Known for its lively piano tunes, rowdy laughter, and the constant clink of glasses, it drew miners, gamblers, and travelers alike. Nights in the saloon were never quiet. The piano was the centerpiece, its keys played with fire and skill by a pianist who could make the most tired miner tap his boots in rhythm. Patrons danced, joked, and reveled, letting the music wash over the smoke-filled room. But the music ended abruptly one fateful evening, and the echoes of that final performance haunt the town to this day. The story begins in the late 1800s, when Silver City was still raw and dangerous. The saloon was crowded that night, filled with miners freshly paid and gamblers testing their luck. The pianist, a man in his 40s with slicked-back hair and a cheerful demeanor, played a lively tune that seemed to push the night forward with energy. The cause of the shooting is unclear, though some say it was a dispute over cards. Others whisper of a lover's quarrel gone terribly wrong. Whatever the reason, the pianist fell mid-song, the melody cut short, his fingers still pressed against the keys. The room erupted in chaos. Patrons ducked under tables, chairs overturned, and the night's laughter became screams. In the days following, the saloon remained standing but never truly reopened. Owners tried to restore business, but the magic had gone. Stories of unexplained events began to circulate among locals. Staff reported hearing the faintest piano notes when the building was empty, keys pressed softly as if played by invisible hands. The music was never a full song, merely snippets of melody fragment here, a chord struck there. It seemed to carry the sorrow of the pianist, a lament that could not be silenced even in death. Years later, the saloon burned in a mysterious fire. Some say it was accidental, a lantern knocked over, a candle too close to the drapes. Others insist it was deliberate, the final act of a town unable to face the memories of that night. Whatever the cause, the fire reduced the building to ash and blackened timbers. Yet, even after the flames died, the piano's music persisted. Travelers passing near the ruins, especially on windy nights, report hearing notes drifting in the air, soft and haunting, carried as if by memory itself. The experiences of witnesses are remarkably consistent. One traveler, walking home from the nearby train station, recalled the night wind bringing a melody that seemed to rise from the ruins. He paused, hearing laughter threading through the faint piano notes, as if the room itself were replaying its last night alive. The music faded, leaving him in a heavy silence that pressed in around him. Another local swears he saw a flicker of light in the window frames of the ruined saloon, as if the candles on tables had been relit, and could almost feel the warmth of the room before the cold returned. Some people have tried to interact with the phenomenon. Paranormal investigators have set up cameras and recorders near the ruins, capturing piano notes that rise and fall without explanation. Occasionally, the laughter of an unseen crowd echoes faintly on recordings, then cuts off abruptly, leaving an eerie void. Instruments left near the ruins have been known to move slightly on their own, as though the spirit of the saloon still wishes to play. Visitors sometimes report fleeting shadows dancing across the scorched floor, figures blurred and indistinct, yet unmistakably moving in time with the phantom music. Locals have given the site a reputation that blends respect and fear. Few dare to linger after dusk, especially during storms or strong winds, when the music seems most active. Some say that the notes are a warning, a reminder that life is fragile and that joy can end abruptly, leaving sorrow in its wake. Others suggest that the pianist himself is bound to the ruins, compelled to replay that final song endlessly, his spirit trapped between memory and music. The laughter that follows is thought to belong to the patrons, their spirits drawn to the sound that once defined their happiest nights. There are variations in the stories too. Some claim that if you lean close and listen carefully, the music will respond to you, speeding up or slowing down with your heartbeat. Others say that attempting to step inside the ruins at night brings a chill, and that unseen fingers brush past you, as if coaxing you to dance with ghosts who no longer exist. A few adventurous souls swear that they have seen a figure seated at a burned-out piano, head bowed, hands moving across invisible keys. And when the figure notices them, it vanishes instantly, leaving only the fading notes behind. Even during the day, the ruins carry an undeniable weight. Sunlight reveals only the scorched timbers and blackened walls, but the imagination fills the spaces with the memory of what was lost. The piano, now gone, continues to live in the minds of those who know the stories. The music is a remnant of celebration, a melody intertwined with tragedy. And for anyone passing nearby, the faint echo of that final song serves as a reminder that some moments and some spirits refuse to be forgotten. The saloon with no music is more than a ruined building. It is a memory trapped in time, where joy and terror coexist. The laughter, the notes, the shadows, they are all threads of a night that ended in blood and sorrow, woven into the very air above Silver City. To hear the piano at night is to glimpse the echo of lives once lived, to feel the thrill of celebration and the sting of loss simultaneously. And though the saloon no longer welcomes the living, its music still plays, faintly, for those willing or unlucky enough to listen. Even today, wind blowing through the ruins can carry the softest piano notes. Sometimes, laughter threads between the chords, teasing, fleeting, and gone. And those who pause to hear it know, without knowing why, that the saloon remembers its last night, its final song, and the lives that danced, drank, and died within its walls. The music may have ended for the living, but it has never truly stopped. Silver Lake stretches quietly along the edge of Silver City, its surface often glassy and still, reflecting the sky like a dark mirror. By day, it is a haven for fishermen and families. The gentle lapping of water against the shore, a soothing soundtrack to the town's routines. But when night falls, a different story emerges, one whispered by those who know the lake well. They speak of a figure rising from the shallows, a drenched man whose presence chills the air and freezes the blood of anyone unfortunate enough to see him. The drowned man, as he is called, appears without warning. Fishermen on late-night trips report seeing a dark shape breaking the surface, water streaming from soaked clothes, hair plastered to a pale, expressionless face. His eyes are said to be hollow, black as the depths from which he emerged, yet somehow aware, tracking every movement along the shoreline. Those who have tried to approach him describe a creeping dread that makes each step feel heavier than the last, as if invisible hands tug at their feet. The moment anyone draws close, the figure collapses back into the water. Yet strangely, no ripples remain. It is as if the lake swallows him whole, leaving behind only the echo of his presence. The legend traces back over a century. Old records describe a fisherman who perished during a fierce storm that swept across Silver Lake. Caught in tangled nets, the man struggled against the surging waves, dragging equipment and ropes that bound him to the water. His cries for help were lost amid thunder and rain. By the time his companions managed to reach the spot, he had vanished beneath the surface, leaving only frantic splashes and the twisted remnants of his net. He was never recovered. In the weeks that followed, locals claimed to see a figure rising from the water on stormy nights, drenched, searching, as if still struggling to free himself from the bonds that claimed his life. Accounts of encounters are chillingly consistent. One fisherman recalls tying his boat to the dock on a moonless night, preparing to head home. A sudden movement in the shallows drew his attention. A man, soaked from head to toe, standing waist deep in the dark water. The fisherman froze as the figure raised his head, eyes hollow and unblinking. A cold wave of terror swept through him. He stepped closer, calling out, and the figure collapsed backward into the water. The fisherman expected a splash, waves, or some disturbance. There was none. The lake's surface returned to calm, eerily still. Yet, he could feel the gaze lingering, as if the drowned man's spirit was still tracking him from below. Another tale comes from a couple camping near the northern edge of the lake. They were awakened by a sudden chill, the water glowing faintly under the moonlight. From the shallow edge, the drowned man emerged, water cascading from his body in ghostly streams. His eyes met theirs, dark and empty, and a soundless scream seemed to fill the air. Terrified, they ran to their car, only to glance back and see the figure vanish, leaving the surface unnaturally calm. They claimed to hear faint splashes behind them, though each time they turned, the water was flat and silent, as if it had never been disturbed at all. The drowned man is not violent, though his appearance carries an undeniable threat. Many who see him report a weight pressing on their chest, a cold that seeps into bones, and a feeling of breath being stolen from the lungs. He is a reminder of the lake's power, a specter of nature's unpredictability, and of a tragedy that left life suspended between water and air. Some say the spirit is searching, endlessly attempting to reclaim the breath and freedom stolen from him in death. Others claim he is a warning to those who venture too far at night, a guardian of the lake's dark and quiet corners. Local folklore adds eerie details. Some residents claim that during storms, when the wind lashes the trees and rain pounds the earth, the drowned man's form rises more often, more clearly, sometimes standing fully upright, as though he is attempting to climb onto the shore. His eyes are said to glow faintly in the dark, reflecting the lightning or the moonlight, and a faint scent of wet earth and decay follows him. Fishermen have reported their nets tangling inexplicably, as if snagged by unseen hands, and boats rocking even in calm waters when they pass the same spots where he is said to appear. Interestingly, there are moments when the lake seems alive with subtle signals of the drowned man's presence even without sightings. Birds avoid the shoreline, and fog often settles thick and low, obscuring the water and creating the illusion of movement beneath. Ripples sometimes appear without cause, just enough to make one glance toward the water. And shadows play along the surface, as if someone or something is moving beneath. Even the reflections on the glassy water can appear distorted, suggesting a figure just below the surface, watching silently. Stories passed down through generations have created both fear and respect for the lake. Children are warned never to swim at night, and visitors are advised to keep to the edges, especially during storms. The drowned man has become part of Silver City's identity, a ghostly reminder that beneath calm surfaces can lie peril, and that the tragedies of the past do not always stay buried. Despite his haunting presence, the drowned man is a solitary figure. He does not interact with the living beyond the fleeting terror of being seen. Yet for those who encounter him, the memory is less than a cold weight, an impossible stillness, and the knowledge that a soul remains tied to the water, endlessly searching for the breath that was stolen long ago. To witness the drowned man of Silver Lake is to confront both fear and loss. The lake may appear serene and inviting, but the shadows beneath its surface hold the weight of tragedy. When night falls and the wind moves across the water, it is wise to tread lightly, to respect the place where a man was claimed by the depths. And if a figure emerges, soaked and silent, with eyes black as the lake itself, it is best to step back and watch, for his search never ends. and his presence is a reminder that some spirits are forever tied to the moments that stole their lives. On the edge of Silver City, just beyond the last row of houses and the overgrown fields, stands the silent schoolhouse. Once a modest building full of children's laughter and the scratch of chalk on blackboards, it has long since fallen into ruin. Windows are shattered, desks lie overturned, and the roof sags under decades of neglect. Yet despite its abandonment, the schoolhouse is far from empty. Those who dare to approach after dusk speak of sounds and sights that suggest the building still functions, though its pupils are no longer alive. The legend of the silent schoolhouse began nearly a century ago. Local records show that the school once served children from all over the town, a place of learning, mischief, and camaraderie. Teachers recall the routines, lessons in arithmetic, spelling, and history, punctuated by the occasional scolding and bursts of laughter. But tragedy struck when a fire, caused by a faulty stove in the basement, swept through the building. Many of the students and staff were trapped, unable to escape as the flames consumed the wooden structure. The town mourned deeply, but time passed, and the ruins were left to rot, a charred reminder of the lives lost within its walls. Stories of paranormal activity began almost immediately. Residents near the school reported hearing the faint sounds of children singing or reciting lessons, especially on windy nights. Footsteps echo along the corridors where floorboards no longer exist, and doors are heard opening and closing even when no one is inside. Some claim that the laughter is not joyful but hollow, tinged with fear and longing, as though the children are trapped in the final moments of the fire, endlessly replaying a day they cannot leave. Visitors to the schoolhouse often report ghostly chalk marks appearing on the blackboards. Words and numbers are scrawled in perfect, careful handwriting, only to vanish moments later as though wiped clean by invisible hands. Some see simple lessons or arithmetic problems, spelling words, but others describe more personal messages, names, or cryptic phrases that seem to address them directly. One visitor swore she saw a figure tracing letters on the board, only to turn and find the classroom empty, the air still thick with the smell of smoke and chalk dust. The desks themselves are said to shift inexplicably. People exploring the ruins report that chairs rock as if occupied, books topple from shelves, and the floor creaks under invisible weight. A common experience is the feeling of being watched. Visitors describe dozens of eyes following their movements, though no one is there. Some feel gentle brushes against their arms, as if tiny hands are reaching out for attention, for guidance, or simply for acknowledgement that they exist. Others claim to hear whispers, a teacher's reprimand, a child asking a question, or the faint hum of a school song carried through broken windows. One particularly chilling encounter involved a group of teenagers who dared to spend the night in the schoolhouse. They lit lanterns and explored classroom by classroom, joking at first, but as midnight approached, the atmosphere shifted. Shadows lengthened unnaturally, and the laughter began not faintly, but all around them, echoing from corners, hallways, and even beneath the floorboards. They saw chalk marks appear on blackboards across different rooms, spelling out their names in uneven scrawls. When one girl approached a desk to inspect it, she felt a weight on her shoulder, as if someone were sitting there, staring at her. They fled, leaving behind backpacks, flashlights, and the feeling of eyes that never stopped watching. Teachers who once worked at the school, before it closed, insist the building was always special, even before the fire. They tell of classrooms where children's voices lingered, of objects that moved without explanation, and of moments when students would suddenly fall silent, staring at something unseen. After the fire, many believe the energy of the school became trapped, preserving the children's spirits and the echoes of daily life. The building, even in ruin, is a vessel for that memory, its lessons never truly ending, its pupils forever present. The surrounding grounds reflect the building's sorrow. The playground, now overgrown and rusted, occasionally shows signs of play. Swings move gently in windless nights. Footprints appear in the dirt around the broken slide. And tire tracks from an old wooden cart have been seen, fresh in the morning, even though no one has visited for days. Ivy crawls up the walls of the schoolhouse, hiding shattered windows and charred beams. Yet the plants seemed to respect the building's interior, never disturbing the desks, blackboards, or scattered books. It is as if the ruins themselves are conscious, guarding the remnants of life that persists inside. The silent schoolhouse has become part of Silver City's identity, a reminder of loss and memory. It is both feared and respected, a place children are warned to avoid and adventurers are drawn to explore. Scholars and paranormal enthusiasts visit, documenting chalk marks, recording sounds, and photographing shadows, yet none claim to fully understand the phenomena. Whether it is a natural echo of trauma, a lingering spirit, or a combination of both, the schoolhouse continues to command attention, compelling observers to acknowledge the presence of those who can no longer speak for themselves. To step inside the silent schoolhouse is to enter a world frozen in tragedy. The laughter, whispers, and shifting objects are not mere curiosities, they are the residue of lives interrupted. Lessons left unfinished, and children who remain forever in the halls where they once learned and played. The blackboards may fade, the footsteps may vanish, and the air may settle into silence, but the energy of the school persists. Those who have dared to visit report a lingering feeling that the building remembers, that the children watch, and that the classroom is never truly empty. Even today, when wind stirs through the broken windows and the sun dips below the horizon, the silent schoolhouse seems alive. Shadows flit across desks, faint sounds echo through corridors, and chalk marks appear, waiting to be read. The building stands as both a memorial and a warning, a place where the past refuses to be ignored, and where the lessons, though tragic, continue without end. On the quiet streets of Silver City sits the doctor's house, a stately structure that has long since fallen silent. Its windows are streaked with dust, the paint is cracked and peeling, and the garden, once carefully tended, is now overgrown. Yet the house is far from empty. Locals whisper of strange lights flickering in the upper windows at night, the echo of coughing that seems to come from rooms long abandoned, and the shadowy figure of a man in a white coat moving purposefully through the halls. The house belonged to Dr. Elias Harding, one of Silver City's earliest physicians. He was a man of skill and dedication, known for treating patients in their homes and at the small clinic he maintained on the second floor of his house. In an era before modern medicine, illness often meant death, and Dr. Harding was both witness and participant in the final hours of his patients' lives. Some lived thanks to his care, but many perished despite his efforts. Over time, neighbors began to notice strange occurrences around the house, and after the doctor's death, those reports grew more chilling. It is said that the second floor remains the most active part of the house. Many visitors and curious onlookers have claimed that at night, they see the glow of a lantern moving behind the curtains. The light shifts from room to room, pausing briefly as if the figure is tending to unseen patients. Sometimes, a shadow crosses the glass, tall and broad-shouldered, unmistakably human. Yet, when anyone approaches the door or peers inside, the figure vanishes, leaving only darkness and silence. Coughing is another hallmark of the doctor's house. Those living nearby describe faint, irregular coughs that echo through the night air. They claim the sound comes from the upstairs rooms, though the house has been vacant for decades. On occasion, these coughs are accompanied by the creak of floorboards or the rustle of curtains, as though someone is moving about, checking on patients or writing notes in the dim light of a lantern. The sounds are unnerving precisely because they are human, realistic enough to suggest life, yet impossible, as no one has lived in the house for years. One account comes from a local man walking home after visiting friends late one evening. As he passed the doctor's house, he noticed a dim lantern light in the upper window, moving slowly from one side to the other. The man froze, watching the light pause as if someone were observing him. Suddenly, he heard a dry cough, followed by the unmistakable sound of shoes on wooden floorboards. Terrified, he ran home, only to glance back and see the window dark, the house silent once more. The image of the moving lantern and the cough lingered in his memory for weeks, a reminder that some presences refuse to rest. Stories suggest that Dr. Harding's spirit may be bound to the house by his work. In life, He spent countless hours tending to the sick, often at the cost of his own health and rest. Neighbors report that the more serious or terminal the illness, the more active the upper rooms become at night. It is as if the doctor's devotion persists beyond death, moving through the house to check on patients who no longer exist, comforting them in the way only he could. Some visitors claim that objects shift slightly while the lights move, papers, medical tools, or even a chair, displaced as if someone paused to sit. The doctor's house has also become associated with sightings beyond the light and sounds. On rare occasions, witnesses report seeing a figure in a long white coat walking through the garden or standing in the doorway, lantern in hand. He is described as tall, broad, and calm, moving with a purposeful gait. People who have seen him at a distance insist he is not threatening, merely intent, as if his attention is focused entirely on a task only he can see. Approaching him, however, causes him to vanish, leaving behind the faint scent of antiseptic or old wood, and sometimes the lingering echo of a cough. Paranormal enthusiasts have visited the site with equipment to capture evidence. Recordings sometimes pick up faint footsteps, murmured words, or the soft scrape of metal tools being handled unseen. Photographs occasionally reveal shadows that do not match any object in the room, or streaks of light in the upper windows resembling the movement of a lantern. While skeptics dismiss these events as tricks of light or imagination, those who have spent extended time near the house claim there is something undeniably alive within Ida, presence with purpose, tied to the life and work of the doctor who once called it home. The house itself contributes to the eerie atmosphere. Its walls are thick and creaking, the rooms arranged as they were in Dr. Harding's time. The upstairs hallway is long and narrow, with doors opening into rooms that retain the echoes of footsteps and coughs. Windows are cracked but intact, allowing moonlight to filter through and illuminate dust motes that swirl like tiny spirits. The garden is overgrown but not chaotic, as though someone tends it invisibly, guiding the vines and trimming the hedges without ever being seen. Even in daylight, the house feels alive, aware, and watchful. Despite or perhaps because of its reputation, few dare to enter the doctor's house after sunset. Neighbors warn that the upstairs rooms are particularly active, that the light is never idle, and that the coughs may follow one home, lingering in memory long after the visitor leaves. For those who approach with respect, it is said they can feel the doctor's presence as protective, almost paternal. For others, the house is a place of unease, the echo of lives lost and the devotion of a doctor who never truly left, creating a sense of being watched, evaluated, and observed. The doctor's house remains one of Silver City's most haunting locations, a structure where work, duty, and life persist beyond death. Its lanterns, its coughs, and the occasional glimpse of a white-coated figure are not threats, but reminders of dedication, of lives touched, and of the weight of mortality. To step near its threshold is to feel a presence that moves purposefully, a spirit that cannot leave its post, eternally tending to those in need, even when the patients are long gone. Even today, when night falls and the streets are silent, a flicker of light in the upper windows, a soft cough in the distance, or the shadow of a man moving with quiet determination reminds Silver City that some doctors never truly retire, and some houses never truly empty. At the edge of Silver City lies the ruins of the Church of Shattered Glass, once a proud house of worship with soaring spires and vibrant stained glass windows. The church stood as a symbol of faith and community, its walls echoing with hymns and prayers. The sunlight streaming through colored panes, painting the interior in gold, red, and blue. That was until a violent storm changed everything. A bolt of lightning struck the steeple one fateful night, shattering the stained glass into countless jagged shards and reducing the building to a skeletal ruin. The congregation fled, and the church was abandoned, but some say the sanctity of the space survived the destruction, carried in the figures that once adorned its windows. Locals and visitors tell stories of ghostly shapes moving among the ruins after dark. The shattered figures from the windows, saints, angels, and clergy now seem to walk the church grounds, glowing faintly in the moonlight. They move slowly, their motions deliberate and solemn, as if continuing the rituals of the faith they once represented. Their faces are frozen in expressions of sorrow or devotion, yet there is a sense of awareness in their presence, a subtle acknowledgement of the world that has grown around the ruins in their absence. One visitor describes seeing a bishop emerge from the shadows of the altar. His robes shimmered faintly, and he held a glowing staff, the lantern light of some unseen source illuminating his features. The bishop lifted his hand in blessing, and the visitor felt an unearthly warmth, a fleeting sense of comfort and reverence. Then, in an instant, the figure dissolved into sparks of light that scattered across the stone floor, vanishing as quickly as they had appeared. The witness later said he could still feel the echo of that blessing, lingering in the air long after the figure had disappeared. Other sightings describe processions of spectral figures moving silently across the churchyard. Children, monks, and women in flowing robes appear, walking along the cracked stone paths or gathering near the broken windows. Some pause to examine the shards of colored glass, as if recognizing fragments of themselves frozen in the broken panes. The figures appear gentle, almost mournful, and never interact with the living, yet their presence is undeniable, felt as much in the heart as it is seen with the eyes. The church is alive with sound, despite its ruin. On quiet nights, the faint ringing of bells can be heard, though the belfry collapsed long ago. The wind blowing through jagged window frames creates a haunting harmony, resembling both hymns and whispers, as if the elements themselves are carrying out the final liturgy. Visitors report a feeling of reverence that grows stronger as darkness falls, an awareness that the site remains sacred, tended by invisible hands rather than abandoned completely to time and decay. Photographers and paranormal investigators have documented unusual phenomena. Cameras capture faint glows and shadows that seem to float independently of the environment, while audio equipment sometimes records soft whispers and the distant echo of footsteps. The shapes of figures appear in fleeting glimpses, never fully forming, preserving the ethereal nature of the haunting. Some say the shattered glass itself holds part of the spirits, fragments of color capturing the essence of saints and worshippers, releasing their glow when night falls. The local legend explains the presence of the spirits as a blend of devotion and tragedy. Those who perished in or around the church during the lightning strike, or who were tied to the rituals of faith for decades, are thought to remain bound to the site. The bishop, the children, and the congregation, each figure represents a life interrupted, a devotion carried beyond death, and a memory preserved in the ruins. The shattered windows are not merely broken glass, but the vessel for spirits unwilling or unable to leave. Guardians of a church that was once vibrant and now exists only in fragments. Even during daylight, the ruins hold a strange beauty. Sunlight passes through shards of glass embedded in the ground, casting colorful reflections that shift and shimmer like ghosts themselves. But when night falls, the spectral congregation becomes most visible. Lantern-like glows move slowly among the ruins, the faint sound of hymns and footsteps echoing over stone and grass. Those who witness this phenomenon often feel both awe and sorrow, as if glimpsing a world that exists parallel to their own church, where devotion has endured beyond mortality, and where the shattered glass continues to reflect the light of faith and memory. The Church of Shattered Glass is more than a ruin. It is a testament to the power of belief and the lingering presence of those who devoted their lives to it. Its glowing figures, shattered panes, and ghostly rituals remind visitors that some faith cannot be destroyed, that devotion can persist beyond death, and that even in destruction, beauty and reverence endure. Long before Silver City rose from the surrounding plains, travelers and pioneers followed a rugged trail that wound through hills and valleys, carrying supplies, hopes, and dreams of a new life. It was a road of hardship, where wagons creaked under heavy loads, oxen strained at yokes, and families pressed forward despite the dangers that lay ahead. Yet for many, the journey was never completed. Sudden storms, illness, and misfortune claimed the lives of some pioneers, leaving wagons abandoned along the trail. their cargo rotting in the sun or buried under mud and rock. Today, that trail remains, quiet by day but alive with whispers of the past after nightfall. Travelers along the old route sometimes report a strange phenomenon: the distant creak of wagon wheels rolling over uneven terrain, accompanied by the low, mournful cries of oxen. Lanterns flicker in the distance, swinging gently as though held by hands long gone. Yet when anyone approaches, the sounds fade, the lights vanish, and no caravan ever arrives. The experience is both mesmerizing and terrifying, leaving witnesses with the uneasy sense that they have glimpsed a journey that never truly ended. Historians suggest these sightings may be echoes of the pioneers who perished on the trail. Families forced to abandon wagons during storms, travelers lost in blizzards or floods, and immigrants who succumbed to disease. Some of these spirits seem bound to the route they could never complete. Local lore insists that the wagons are drawn by invisible oxen, moving slowly, as if reluctant to leave the road that defines their final days. The lanterns, some claim, are a guide for the living, flickering with light but vanishing when approached, reminding passersby of the fragility of life and the unfinished nature of those early journeys. One account comes from a man traveling the trail late one autumn evening. He had been returning from a nearby town, the sun long gone behind the hills, when he heard the unmistakable creak of wheels. At first, he thought it was a modern vehicle, but the sound was uneven, wooden, and hollow, rolling across the ground in a rhythm that suggested weight far heavier than any car. In the distance, two lanterns swayed, faint orange glows bobbing in the dark. Curious, he followed, keeping his eyes on the flickering lights. The sound grew louder, the cries of oxen echoing across the valley. But when he reached the point where the lights should have been, there was nothing, only the faint scent of hay and the lingering impression of movement that left the hairs on his arms standing. Others have described similar experiences, often under stormy or misty conditions. A group of campers reported seeing a line of wagons stretching along the old trail, lanterns suspended above each one. The oxen appeared spectral, their bodies pale and translucent, their eyes glowing faintly in the dark. The campers swore that as they approached, the figures would halt, sway slightly, and then fade into mist. Even when the weather cleared, the impressions of wagons and animals seemed to remain, leaving footprints and wheel marks that quickly disappeared, as though the trail itself erased any evidence of the phantom caravan. The effect is not limited to sight and sound. Travelers claim a sensation of cold follows them along the path, particularly when the lanterns appear. Some describe a feeling of being watched, as if unseen eyes peer from the wagons, from behind the oxen, or along the edges of the road. Others report a sudden heaviness, as though the weight of the cargo, the supplies, belongings, and hopes of the pioneers is pressing down upon them. The experience is so vivid that those who encounter it often find themselves trembling long after leaving the trail, unable to explain why a road so empty could evoke such fear. Stories suggest that the wagons repeat their final journeys nightly, traveling the same route, drawn by unfinished business or lingering devotion to the path they could never complete. Some witnesses claim that if they stand quietly and watch, the lanterns appear to approach slowly, as if attempting to pass, but always remain just out of reach. Others insist that speaking aloud will cause the caravan to retreat, the lights disappearing instantly and the oxen's cries cutting off mid-call. It is as though the spirits are aware of the living, yet bound to remain within the boundaries of their tragic journey. Local legends warn of the caravan's purpose. Some say it is a caution, a reminder of the dangers faced by those who traveled west and the perilous nature of ambition untempered by care. Others claim it is a guide for the living, leading those who respect the trail safely through the hills and valleys, but vanishing for those who approach recklessly. Paranormal enthusiasts have visited with cameras and recorders, capturing faint wheel sounds, low murmurs, and ghostly flickers of light in areas where no physical source exists. Skeptics argue that fog, wind, and imagination explain these sightings. Yet the consistency of reports over decades lends weight to the idea that something truly otherworldly haunts the trail. The caravan of ghost wagons is more than an eerie story, it is a living memory of the hardships faced by early pioneers. It embodies the struggle to survive, the tragedies of storms and disease, and the indomitable spirit of those who tried to carve a new life from unforgiving land. By night, the old trail is transformed, shifting from a quiet road to a corridor of remembrance, where lanterns swing in the wind and oxen wail without pause, forever retracing a journey they could not finish. Even today, when the wind rustles the tall grasses and the moonlight glints across the dirt path, the creak of wheels and the soft, spectral cries of oxen are said to echo across the valley. Travelers pause, hearts pounding, eyes scanning the darkness for the faint glow of lanterns. Those who witness the phantom caravan know that the past is never truly gone, that some journeys are eternal, and that the pioneers of Silver City may still be walking their path, wagon by wagon, under the light of an unending moon. On the outskirts of Silver City, tucked behind towering elm trees and a wrought iron fence that has long since rusted, stands a Victorian house with a reputation that chills the bones. Its paint is faded, the wooden siding warped by years of sun, wind, and rain, and the front porch sags under its own weight. Yet despite its decay, the house is far from lifeless. For decades, locals and travelers alike have reported a sound that drifts from its shuttered windows, a woman's anguished weeping. It is a mournful cry, low and persistent, echoing through the night with a sorrow so raw that it unsettles even the most skeptical listener. The story begins with the house's original occupant, Eleanor Whitmore, a woman of refinement and warmth whose life was irrevocably changed by tragedy. She married young, her husband a miner who worked at rich veins outside Silver City. In those early years, the home was filled with laughter, music, and the gentle sounds of domestic life. But one fateful day, her husband never returned. A cave-in at the mine claimed his life, leaving Eleanor alone with grief that would consume her entirely. Neighbors recall that she withdrew from the world, rarely leaving the house, and spent her days and nights wandering the halls, mourning the loss she could not bear. The widow's grief did not abate with time. Some accounts suggest that Eleanor eventually died in the home, her body discovered only after neighbors noticed the curtains drawn for weeks on end. Yet the sorrow she carried appears to have lingered beyond death. Visitors today report hearing the unmistakable sound of weeping, especially after sunset. It is not the quiet sniffle of someone crying alone, but the guttural, heart-wrenching sobs of someone whose despair has no end. The sound drifts through the shutters, sometimes soft and distant, other times so near, it feels as though the mourner stands just behind you. Sightings accompany the sound. Several passers-by have claimed to see a pale figure in the upper windows, dressed in black with a long, flowing veil covering her face. Her posture is always the same, stooped, hands clasped to her chest, shoulders shaking with grief. The veil obscures her features, but those who observe closely swear they see tears glinting on her pale cheeks. Some say she looks out over the town, as if searching for her lost husband, and vanishes suddenly when anyone tries to approach the house, leaving only an empty window and a lingering chill in the air. A common theme among those who report encounters is the overwhelming sense of sorrow that seems to cling to the house itself. Visitors describe a heaviness that presses on the chest, the air damp with a coldness that seeps into the skin. Doors and floorboards creak without explanation, sometimes in rhythm with the weeping, as though the house itself participates in the widow's grief. On rare occasions, people hear the sound of footsteps in the hall above, slow and deliberate, yet no one is visible, and the echoes seem to fade as quickly as they appear. One particularly chilling account comes from a local historian who ventured inside the house during daylight hours. The rooms were thick with dust, furniture overturned or decayed, and cobwebs stretched between the walls. Yet, even in the bright afternoon, he reported feeling eyes upon him, a sensation that drew his attention to the staircase leading to the second floor. As he ascended, he heard a soft sobbing, a sound so human and raw it made his stomach tighten. At the top of the stairs, the hallway was empty, yet the sobs continued, fading only when he stepped back down. The historian later said he felt as though the house itself was mourning, its walls and floors infused with the widow's enduring sorrow. Neighbors often share stories of eerie encounters without entering the house. Late at night, passers-by walking along the street report hearing the weeping from the windows, sometimes accompanied by the flutter of fabric as if the veil itself moves in the wind. Children whisper of seeing a shadowy figure peering down from the upper rooms, vanishing when approached. Others claim that leaving an offering, flowers, a note, or even a candle results in the sobbing becoming softer, as if the widow acknowledges the gesture before retreating into silence once again. The crying widow's house has become more than just a haunted home. It is a symbol of unending grief, a manifestation of a sorrow that refused to fade even after death. Paranormal enthusiasts have visited with recording devices, capturing sobs, floor creaks, and faint whispers. Photographs sometimes reveal vague shapes in the windows or shadows moving across the walls, but nothing concrete. Whether the phenomenon is spiritual, psychological, or a combination of both, the house leaves an impression on anyone who approaches. That grief, once fully consumed by the heart, can linger long after the mortal body is gone. Even today, the house maintains an aura of tragic reverence. Its shutters remain mostly closed, the lawn overgrown and wild, and the air around it carries a chill that is palpable even on warm evenings. Travelers are advised to pass quietly, respecting the presence within. And when night falls, if one listens carefully, the sound of a woman weeping can still be heard, drifting through the shutters and into the streets, a sound of love lost, of mourning without end, of a heart tethered to the past. The crying widow's house reminds all who approach it that some sorrow cannot be contained, that the echoes of tragedy linger, and that grief, once it takes root, can stretch beyond a lifetime. Those who hear the sobbing or glimpse the pale figure in the window carry the memory with them, a haunting reminder that some hearts never find rest. On the outskirts of Silver City lies Iron Bridge, a once bustling crossing where steel rails carried trains laden with coal, ore, and passengers. The bridge was an engineering marvel of its day, spanning the river with solid girders that shook with every passing engine. But the railway has long since vanished. The tracks were torn up decades ago, leaving only rusted beams and overgrown weeds. Yet despite the absence of trains, the bridge is far from silent. On certain nights, when the air is heavy and still, locals claim to hear the thunderous roar of a steam engine racing across the span, the whistle screaming into the darkness, accompanied by a rush of wind that chills the bones. The phenomenon has been reported for generations. Witnesses describe a deep vibration in the ground, as though the bridge itself remembers the weight of iron wheels and the momentum of locomotives. The sound begins faint, a distant rumble carried on the wind, and then grows to a deafening roar, as though the train is barreling directly toward them. Those standing too close swear they feel the vibrations in their feet, even though there are no tracks, no engine, and nothing but weeds stretching across the bridge's length. One story tells of a young couple who stopped to admire the river at dusk. The air was quiet, the only sound the gentle lapping of water below. Suddenly, a low rumble began to build, echoing across the valley. At first, they thought it might be a truck on a distant road. But the sound intensified, accompanied by the unmistakable scream of a steam whistle. The wind whipped past them, tearing at hair and clothes, carrying with it the scent of smoke and oil. The couple backed away, frozen in disbelief, as the vibration grew, then abruptly ceased, leaving only the whisper of the river and an eerie silence. Local historians suggest that the ghostly train is a remnant of tragedy. Records indicate that several fatal accidents occurred on the bridge, including a derailment that claimed the lives of passengers and crew. It is said that the spectral train represents the last journey of those who perished trapped in motion, racing endlessly across the structure that took their lives. Some believe the apparition is tied to the bridge itself, a conduit for energy and memory, replaying the roar of steam engines long gone. Rail enthusiasts and paranormal investigators have tried to capture evidence of the phenomenon, Recordings often reveal low-frequency rumbles and ghostly whistles that do not correlate with any modern source. Night vision cameras sometimes pick up fleeting shapes, a bright glow along the rails, the vague outline of a train car, or a flash of light reflected off imaginary windows. In some instances, investigators report the sensation of being brushed by a sudden gust of wind, or of the ground trembling slightly, just as witnesses describe. Even skeptics admit that the intensity of the experience cannot be easily explained. The bridge's reputation has also led to encounters that are more personal and unsettling. A man walking home late one night reported seeing the headlight of an approaching train emerging from the far side of the river. The light glowed bright white, cutting through the darkness like a blade. He stepped back, heart pounding, but the bridge vibrated beneath him, and the wind roared in his ears. Moments later, the light vanished, the sound of the train dissipating as though it had never existed. Others described seeing shadowy shapes moving along the rails, cars filled with indistinct forms. Yet when approached, the figures vanish into thin air. The experience is not limited to sight and sound. Witnesses describe a sense of urgency, of movement that defies time. It is as though the train carries momentum not only of steel and steam but of history itself. Some feel pressure in their chest, the invisible force of the engine pushing through the empty bridge. Others sense whispers or cries, fragments of conversations carried on the wind, as if the passengers' spirits linger, replaying the moments before the final crash or derailment. The train seems aware of observers, responding to proximity, yet it never fully materializes for those who try to follow it. Iron Bridge itself contributes to the haunting. The steel beams, rusted and weathered, hum faintly at night, resonating with the vibrations of past engines. The river below reflects moonlight off the rails that no longer exist, creating illusions of movement across the bridge. Overgrown weeds and wild grasses obscure the remnants of ties, yet the path of the train feels undeniable, as if the bridge remains alive with memory, refusing to relinquish the echo of its purpose. The ghostly train has become a symbol of Silver City's connection to its industrial past, a reminder of progress, ambition, and the dangers that accompanied it. It is feared and revered in equal measure. Some treat the bridge as sacred ground, stepping lightly and listening respectfully to the rumble in the night. Others avoid it entirely, unwilling to risk encounters with a spectral engine that defies logic yet feels terrifyingly real. Even today, when the wind cuts across the valley and the moon illuminates the empty steel girders, locals report hearing the distant whistle of a train, the deep vibration of wheels, and the rush of phantom wind. Those who approach too closely may feel the tremor beneath their feet or see the glow of headlights in the dark. Iron Bridge remains a crossing not just over the river, but between the present and a past filled with motion, tragedy, and memory. The ghostly train waits, endlessly racing, a spectral echo of lives and iron that cannot rest. In the heart of Silver City, tucked between cobblestone streets and old brick buildings, sits the painter's studio, a place that once overflowed with color, light, and creativity. It belonged to Victor Halstead, a man whose talent brought him local fame and whose portraits seemed to capture not only the likeness but the soul of his subjects. Visitors often remarked on the intensity of his work, eyes that glimmered with emotion, expressions that seemed to breathe, and shadows so lifelike they appeared to move beneath the brushstrokes. Yet Victor Halstead's genius came with a darkness, and after his mysterious death, the studio became a place of rumors, fear, and lingering presence. The studio has been locked for decades, its shutters closed against prying eyes. Locals claim that the building itself is alive with energy, responding to storms and wind with flickering lights visible through the heavy curtains. When lightning strikes nearby, or thunder rattles the old panes, a faint glow can be seen inside, as if the room has been ignited by some unseen hand. Sometimes, those brave enough to press their ear to the door report faint scratching, the sound of brushes moving against canvas, though no artist has stepped foot inside for years. The most unsettling aspect of the studio is the unfinished work Victor left behind. Portraits lean against walls, draped in cloth, or left exposed, each one a frozen moment of someone's gaze. Witnesses insist that these eyes are not entirely still. When the room is empty, the expressions change subtly. A smile fades, a frown deepens, and the eyes, particularly, are said to follow intruders as they move. Some claim the faces plead silently, as though asking to be freed from their painted prisons, their emotions trapped forever in oil and pigment. One evening, a local art student decided to explore the studio during a thunderstorm. The shutters rattled violently, and the room was illuminated by flashes of lightning that revealed the chaotic beauty of Halstead's workspace. Scattered brushes, empty paint jars, and stacks of canvases leaning precariously. As she stepped further inside, she noticed one portrait in particular, a young woman with sorrowful eyes appearing to blink as if alive. The student's heart raced, and when she looked away, the expression on the canvas had shifted to terror, her painted lips forming a silent scream. Fleeing the studio, she swore she felt a cold hand brush against her shoulder, though she never saw anyone. Stories suggest that Victor Halstead's own spirit remains in the studio, bound by obsession or unfinished work. He was known to be a recluse in his later years, painting late into the night, often refusing food and sleep to capture the perfect expression. His sudden death was mysterious. Some say illness, others whisper of foul play, but the timing and nature of his passing have fueled speculation that the studio absorbed a piece of his restless soul. Those who linger near the building report sensing a presence, feeling a weight of observation, as if unseen eyes from the canvases themselves are watching their every move. The studio is especially active during storms. Thunder and lightning seem to animate the room, shaking canvases and creating shifting shadows across the walls. Visitors have reported seeing brushstrokes appear on blank canvases overnight, or colors subtly change on portraits that were once unfinished. Occasionally, the faint scent of linseed oil and turpentine fills the air, though the supplies are long gone. Some witnesses claim to hear low murmurs, the voice of a painter lost in concentration, guiding a brush across an invisible canvas. One particularly chilling account involves a historian researching Silver City's artistic past. He gained entry with permission from the current building owner, stepping into a studio frozen in time. As he examined the portraits, he noticed that one subject, a young boy with anxious eyes, appeared to shift subtly, glancing toward the door each time the historian moved. When he paused, the figure seemed to tilt its head, and in a moment that defied explanation, the boy's painted mouth opened slightly, as if whispering a plea. The historian fled, leaving the studio in silence. Though he later admitted he could still feel the boy's gaze following him long after he left. Even from outside, the studio maintains an aura of unease. Shadows sometimes cross the windows, and lights flicker without any power running through the building. Locals speak of hearing faint scratching, the rustle of papers, or soft footsteps on wooden floors, only to discover that the studio is empty. Those who ignore the warnings sometimes return with stories of eyes staring from the canvases, faces changing subtly to express emotions that should not exist, as if Victor Halstead's obsession with capturing souls has extended beyond life. The painter's studio is more than just a building, it is a monument to genius and madness intertwined. Its walls, canvases, and lingering presence serve as a reminder that art can capture more than likeness. It can trap emotion, memory, and even something of the artist's spirit. Those who encounter the studio speak of a profound unease, as if the portraits themselves judge, observe, and even plead for release. The building is a nexus of creativity and haunting, a place where life and death blur beneath oil-stained brushes and flickering lamplight. Even today, when storms roll over Silver City, the painter's studio comes alive. The shutters rattle, the lights flicker, and the unfinished works seem to breathe with quiet, restless energy. Any who dare approach can hear the faint brush against canvas, feel the weight of unseen eyes, and catch glimpses of expressions shifting subtly in the dim light. It is a place where the past is never still, where art holds memory captive, and where the spirit of a painter refuses to release his subjects, forever bound to the studio he loved and haunted. On the quiet stretch of Silver Street, where cobblestones glint faintly in the moonlight, There exists a phenomenon that has haunted the city for generations. Locals call it the Silent Marchers, a procession of shadowy figures that appears without warning to anyone walking late at night. They are always in perfect formation, moving in precise rows, their boots striking the stone street with a rhythm that is impossible to ignore. The figures are dark and indistinct, lacking any visible features. Yet their presence exudes an uncanny sense of discipline and purpose, as if they are carrying out a duty that transcends death itself. The origins of the Silent Marchers are tied to the city's past. Silver City was once protected by a local militia, men sworn to defend the town against outlaws, invaders, and any threat that dared approach. They trained rigorously, drilling day and night, their boots echoing over the cobblestones of Silver Street as officers demanded precision and obedience. Yet the militia also saw war, fire, and tragedy. Many soldiers perished in battles or succumbed to disease, their bodies laid to rest far from the streets they patrolled. Local legend insists that their sense of duty could not be abandoned, binding them to the city long after their deaths. Witnesses describe encounters that are at once awe-inspiring and terrifying. A late-night pedestrian might notice a faint shadow approaching from the distance. At first, it could be mistaken for a trick of the moonlight or a wandering cat. But as the figures draw closer, the unmistakable sound of boots striking stone grows louder. The rhythm is hypnotic, each step measured, synchronized with the others, forming a cadence that echoes off the walls of nearby buildings. The marchers do not speak. They do not acknowledge the living. They simply continue, advancing in their endless patrol. One account comes from a shopkeeper who stayed late to lock up his store. As he stepped onto Silver Street, he heard the distant clatter of boots. Within moments, shadowy figures emerged from the mist, forming columns that extended beyond the reach of his vision. He froze, unsure whether to run or stand his ground. The marchers passed silently by, their presence tangible, pressing on the air like a living wall of discipline. Once they had vanished, only the lingering echo of synchronized steps remained, vibrating faintly through the cobblestones long after the figures themselves had disappeared. The Silent Marchers are not always predictable. Some nights, they appear suddenly, forcing late travelers to step aside or risk being swept up in their invisible ranks. Others report seeing them approach from multiple directions, converging at the center of Silver Street, as though the city itself were a training ground suspended between life and death. Observers often describe a strange cold that accompanies the figures, a chill that runs along the spine and fills the chest, as though the weight of unseen uniforms and invisible weapons presses against the air itself. The phenomenon has drawn historians and paranormal investigators alike. Researchers note that the street where the marchers appear coincides with locations where militia drills once took place, and some suggest that the figures are spectral imprints, echoes of disciplined soldiers replaying their duties in the hours after sunset. Night vision cameras capture fleeting shapes, dark forms that move with rigid precision. Audio recordings sometimes pick up the unmistakable cadence of boots on stone, rhythmic enough to suggest more than coincidence. Yet there is no physical source for the sound. Some witnesses claim that the marchers interact subtly with their environment. Doors shake as the figures pass, windows vibrate, and loose objects sometimes shift slightly in the path of the phantom column. Yet there is no aggression, no malice. The soldiers appear bound by protocol rather than hostility. One resident reported leaving her window open to see the figures, only to feel a brief brush of wind that moved her curtains exactly in time with the cadence of boots outside, as though the very air carried the presence of disciplined soldiers. There are also stories of lingering effects. Those who witness the Silent Marchers often describe dreams of marching in formation, the rhythmic sound of boots echoing endlessly, or visions of soldiers standing at attention along the city streets. Some feel compelled to return to Silver Street, drawn by a fascination with the spectral patrol. Others avoid the area altogether, fearing the unrelenting discipline and the sense of duty that stretches beyond life and death. The Silent Marchers serve as both a warning and a reminder. They embody a time when loyalty, order, and protection were paramount, a ghostly echo of the city's past militias and the sacrifices they made. Their appearances suggest that duty, once fully embraced, cannot be abandoned even by death. The cobblestones of Silver Street, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps, seem to hold the memory of each step, amplifying the rhythm of spectral boots that march night after night, year after year. Even today, when the moon is high and the streets are empty, the faint clatter of boots can sometimes be heard. Rising out of the mist, like a call from the past, those who dare walk Silver Street late at night may see the shadows fall into formation. Their dark figures moving with precision that defies explanation. And when the marchers vanish, leaving only the echo of synchronized steps, one is left with the lingering impression that Silver City is still watched over by those who cannot rest. Soldiers bound to protect the city eternally, walking their endless patrol along the cobblestones of memory. In the heart of Silver City stands the old Opera House, a grand theater whose velvet curtains, gilded balconies, and ornate chandeliers still hint at an era of elegance and opulence. Though decades have passed since the last sold-out performance, the Opera House has never truly fallen silent. Patrons and performers alike whisper of a presence that lingers in the shadows, a figure known only as the Lady in Red. Unlike the sorrowful, mournful specters that haunt some corners of the city, she exudes confidence and intensity, her appearance bold and unmistakable. The Lady in Red is most often seen seated in the balcony, her crimson silk gown flowing over the railing, her posture perfect, her gaze fixed upon the stage. She does not drift aimlessly through the theater. She observes, she evaluates, and she applauds. Her presence is commanding. Actors claim that during rehearsals, her attention is palpable, and sometimes it is difficult to continue delivering lines under her watchful eyes. Some describe a tingling sensation on the skin, as if her gaze has weight and depth, pressing on their thoughts and emotions. Those who feel her stare often report a mixture of awe and unease, unsure whether she is a muse inspiring brilliance or a menace testing their courage. Legend has it that the Lady in Red was once a celebrated opera singer, a prima donna whose career was cut tragically short. She was known for her fiery performances and passionate temperament, captivating audiences with her commanding voice and magnetic stage presence. A scandal during a critical premiere reportedly ended her career, and she died under mysterious circumstances shortly thereafter. Some say her spirit returned to the Opera House, unwilling to leave the place where her talent and ambition burned brightest. Others insist she was always tied to the theater itself, a guardian of the art form, ensuring that no performance is ever truly forgotten. Witnesses describe a variety of encounters. A stagehand who remained after rehearsal late one night saw a flicker of crimson in the upper balcony. At first, he thought it was a dress left by a costume designer, but as he approached, the gown shimmered unnaturally, and the figure's eyes dark and piercing fixed upon him. The stagehand froze, feeling an electric awareness of being watched, and the air itself seemed to vibrate with her presence. Moments later, the figure vanished, leaving the balcony empty and the theater silent except for the faint echo of applause. Actors and performers have shared similar experiences. When she glanced toward the balcony, she swore she saw the Lady in Red, sitting upright, applauding softly but deliberately after each note. The soprano's performance received standing ovations from the small crew present that night, though no audience had gathered. She later described feeling that her own abilities had been both inspired and scrutinized by the spectral observer, who demanded perfection even from beyond the grave. The Lady in Red's influence is said to extend beyond mere observation. Some claim that curtains flutter despite closed windows, chandeliers sway subtly as if responding to her presence, and musical instruments left in place play faint notes as though she is conducting a phantom orchestra. Others report that sheet music sometimes shifts or falls from stands, pages turning on their own to the correct aria, as if she ensures that the music is performed as intended. It is as though the opera house itself responds to her will, a stage and audience intertwined in her eternal vigil. Guests have occasionally tried to interact with her. Those who attempt to call out or approach the balcony report a sudden sensation of warmth, tinged with the faint aroma of perfume, and the unmistakable sound of applause echoing faintly through the hall. When they reach the balcony, no one is there, yet the red gown remains visible for a moment in the corner of the eye, a shimmering memory of passion and power. Even seasoned employees, familiar with the quirks of an old theater, admit that the lady in red feels entirely different from any ordinary haunting. She commands the space rather than merely inhabiting it. Her appearances are not confined to a specific time or event. She is most often seen during performances or rehearsals, but she also manifests during storms, when lightning casts fleeting shadows across the gilded walls. Some performers claim she has guided them to discover subtle nuances in their work, whispering inspiration that cannot be explained. Others feel the sharp edge of judgment, a reminder that true art demands discipline, even from the living. Whether muse or menace, her presence ensures that the opera never truly closes, that the passion and energy of performance remain alive even in an empty theater. The Lady in Red has become part of the opera house's identity. She is both legend and reality, a guardian of performance, and a reminder of ambition unfulfilled. The theater itself seems to bend around her, the architecture responding to her unseen movements. Visitors report a sense of being part of something larger, a continuity that transcends time and mortality. The Lady in Red is not merely a ghost. She is the enduring spirit of art, devotion, and fiery brilliance that refuses to fade. Even today, when the theater sits empty and the chandeliers are dusted but unlit, the Lady in Red can be glimpsed in the balcony. A flash of crimson, the soft glimmer of silk, and a gaze that pierces the soul. Her presence ensures that the stage is never truly empty, the music never truly silent, and the opera never truly ends. Those who witness her leave with the memory of a figure at once beautiful and formidable, a spectral prima donna whose applause continues to echo through the corridors of Silver City long after the final curtain has fallen. On the outskirts of Silver City, hidden behind a row of abandoned warehouses, stand the crumbling remains of a tavern that locals rarely speak of aloud. Its wooden beams sag under years of neglect, the windows are shattered, and the door hangs crooked on rusted hinges. Once, it was a lively place, filled with laughter, music, and the smell of ale and smoke. But that was long ago. Now, as dusk falls and the sun casts long, blood-red shadows across the street, the tavern seems to awaken in ways that are far from ordinary. Patrons who dare enter speak of a presence that is both unseen and unmistakably alive, the shadows themselves. The phenomenon begins subtly. Upon entering, explorers and thrill-seekers notice that the corners of the room are unnaturally dark, more so than the setting sun should allow. At first, the shadows appear stationary, pooling beneath broken chairs and along cracked walls. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, they begin to move. They stretch upward along the walls, curling across the ceiling, elongating unnaturally, as though the tavern is breathing. One visitor described feeling the shadows coil around his feet like smoke, urging him to turn back, but curiosity or folly kept him, moving deeper into the building. Voices often accompany the movement. Some say the shadows whisper, soft and raspy, like wind through broken glass. At first, the words are indistinct, a low hum beneath the creaking floorboards. Then, more clearly, the whispers take form, calling names, murmuring secrets, and sometimes even mimicking the thoughts of the intruder. One explorer reported that the shadows whispered his full name in a voice so cold and intimate that he could feel it against the back of his neck. He tried to call out, to demand an explanation, but his voice was swallowed by the darkness. The whispers grew louder, circling him in a chorus of invisible mouths, until he fled screaming into the night, leaving the tavern and never returning. The shadows are not merely visual or auditory phenomena. They are tactile as well. Witnesses have reported sudden cold spots that move across the room, brushing against their skin. Some claim to feel fingers, cold and insistent, gripping their arms or tugging at their jackets. Others describe an oppressive heaviness, as though the very darkness is pressing down on them, forcing their knees to buckle and their hearts to pound. Those who linger too long report a sense of being watched, not just by the shadows themselves, but by some unseen consciousness that inhabits them. It is a feeling that cannot be ignored, a presence that is alive, intelligent, and indifferent to the living. The tavern's history hints at why such darkness might linger. During its heyday, it was a place of indulgence and violence. Brawls were common, often ending in broken bones or worse. Tales persist of a bartender who vanished behind the back wall, only to be found days later with no memory of how he arrived there. Rumors tell of patrons who died in disputes, some buried hastily in the cellar when the authorities were distracted. It is said that the building absorbed the rage, sorrow, and fear of its occupants, and that these emotions gave form to the shadows now trapped within. Each dark figure is a fragment of memory, a lingering echo of the violence and despair that once filled the tavern. The tavern is particularly active during storms. Rain pounding on the roof seems to awaken the shadows, and lightning flashes illuminate their shifting shapes across the walls. Some witnesses have reported seeing the forms gather near the bar, moving as if they are patrons taking seats, raising glasses, or arguing over long-forgotten disputes. Their movements are fluid and deliberate, yet unnatural, defying the laws of gravity and space. The effect is disorienting, leaving visitors unsure if they are watching ghosts, shadows, or some other phenomenon entirely. Attempts to document the phenomenon have yielded unsettling results. Cameras capture the movement of darkness in ways that do not correspond to light or physical objects. Audio recorders pick up whispers, though playback often distorts them into chilling, almost inhuman tones. Some researchers report nausea, vertigo, or a sudden sense of urgency to leave, as though the tavern itself senses intrusion and reacts accordingly. Even the most skeptical visitors have admitted that the Tavern of Shadows feels alive, sentient, and entirely beyond explanation. Few return willingly once they have entered. Those who do often speak of a lingering fear that does not fade with distance. They report dreams of the tavern, visions of shifting darkness, and the sensation of cold fingers brushing against their skin. It is as if the shadows extend beyond the building itself, carrying fragments of their consciousness into the world of the living. Locals warn against approaching at dusk or night, and many children are told never to play near the broken windows, lest the shadows decide to follow them home, despite or perhaps because of its terrifying presence. The tavern draws curiosity seekers, thrill hunters, and paranormal enthusiasts. They enter in search of evidence, adventure, or a glimpse of the supernatural. Almost universally, they leave humbled, shaken, and profoundly aware of the power that resides within the building. The Tavern of Shadows is not haunted in the traditional sense. It is alive with memory, anger, and sorrow, a physical manifestation of human emotion twisted into forms of darkness. Those who enter do so at their peril, for the tavern does not release its prisoners lightly. Even today, when the last rays of sunlight fade across Silver City, the tavern seems to breathe. Its broken windows glimmer faintly, the wind carries whispers from within, and the shadows begin their slow, deliberate movement across walls and floorboards. To step inside is to enter a world where memory and darkness have taken shape, where the echoes of violence and despair still linger, and where the very air seems alive with intent. Those who hear the whispers, feel the touch, or glimpse the shifting shadows understand immediately that the Tavern of Shadows is more than a ruin. It is a place where darkness remembers, waits, and watches, eternally patient, eternally hungry, and forever alive. High above Silver City, where the earth slopes into jagged cliffs and pine trees sway against the sky, lies Silver Ridge. The ridge is a favorite among hikers and adventurers, offering panoramic views of the town below and trails that wind through untamed wilderness. Yet those who venture there often speak of an unease that cannot be explained by wind or altitude. Hikers report the sensation of being watched, shadows moving at the edges of vision, and a tall figure, cloaked in black, standing just beyond the tree line. The figure does not approach, it does not speak. It simply watches, silent and unyielding, as though Silver Ridge itself has taken shape in human form. The Guardian of Silver Ridge, as locals call it, has been sighted for decades. Early settlers in Silver City spoke of a dark figure appearing along the cliffs whenever travelers ventured too far, a presence that seemed to mark boundaries without gesture or sound. Some interpreted it as a protector, a spirit ensuring that the ridge, as treacherous slopes and hidden ravines, claimed no more lives than necessary. Others saw it as an omen, a harbinger that led the unwary into danger or misfortune. The ambiguity of the guardian's intent only adds to its power and mystery. Hikers recount the first signs long before the figure appears. A sudden drop in temperature, a gust of wind that seems to pass directly over them, or the rustle of leaves in a place where no wind blows. The figure is often glimpsed at a distance, standing rigid and tall, a dark silhouette against the fading light. It never moves toward the observer, yet the feeling of being followed persists. Some hikers, looking back over their shoulders, have reported seeing the guardian reappear along the ridge's path, even when they have taken detours or doubled back. It is as if it knows the trails better than any living being and mirrors their movements with precision. One tale comes from a young couple who hiked Silver Ridge at sunset. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the air grew thin and cold, and shadows stretched long across the rocky terrain. They felt the first brush of unease as a tall, cloaked figure appeared at the edge of the ridge, barely distinguishable from the trees behind it. It stood motionless, its dark silhouette framed by the last rays of light. Neither spoke, neither moved, yet every time the couple altered their path, the figure seemed to shift, maintaining its distance but never vanishing. By nightfall, they fled the ridge, convinced that the guardian was not just observing, but silently judging, determining whether they would leave the wilderness unscathed. Others claim that the guardian has guided them away from danger. Hikers who have wandered too close to hidden ravines or thin cliff edges report seeing the figure appear at a critical moment, its presence prompting them to step back or change course. Some describe an inexplicable feeling of pressure, as if a hand is gently urging them along a safer path, though no one is there. In this sense, the guardian is seen as a protector, a sentinel ensuring that the ridge's natural hazards do not claim more lives than necessary. Yet even these benevolent encounters are tinged with fear, for the figure's intentions are never clear, and its silence is as unnerving as any threat. The guardian is not always visible. Many hikers report feeling followed without ever seeing the figure. Footsteps seem to echo behind them, even when the trail is empty. Shadows appear to shift unnaturally, forming tall, human-like shapes that vanish when directly confronted. Some describe a sense of weight, an oppressive presence that presses on the chest or shoulders, reminding them that Silver Ridge is not entirely uninhabited. The ridge is alive in ways that defy explanation, and the guardian is its most enigmatic inhabitant, an entity whose existence straddles the line between protection and menace. Paranormal enthusiasts and local historians have speculated about the origin of the guardian. Some suggest it is the spirit of a long-dead watchman, perhaps someone who perished on the ridge while mapping the trails or protecting the early settlers. Others theorize that it is a manifestation of the ridge itself, a sentient embodiment of the cliffs and trees, bound to safeguard its domain. A few whisper darker theories, that the guardian is a malevolent entity, using the guise of a sentinel to lure wanderers into treacherous areas, feeding on fear or misfortune. Whether benevolent or sinister, it is universally agreed that the guardian's presence commands respect and caution. Encounters are most common at twilight or during storms, when visibility is low and the ridge's shadows grow long and indistinct. Hikers report that the figure appears taller and more imposing at these times, sometimes cloaked in what seems like shifting mist rather than fabric. The sound of wind through the trees often coincides with a feeling of being followed, the rustle of branches mimicking the rhythm of footsteps that never touch the ground. Many who have been on the ridge at night swear they can feel eyes upon them, watching from above, from behind rocks, or even from within the dark folds of the cliffs themselves. Despite the fear it inspires, the guardian has become part of Silver City lore. Guides caution new hikers, warning them to respect the trails and the unseen observer. Some carry talismans or flashlights, not merely for navigation, but to ward off the sense of being watched. Yet even the bravest adventurers admit that nothing can truly prepare them for the oppressive presence that stalks the ridge after sunset. The guardian does not speak. It does not move toward its subjects. Yet it leaves an indelible impression on all who encounter it. A reminder that Silver Ridge is watched, judged, and perhaps protected, but never entirely tamed. Even today, the guardian persists. Those who climb Silver Ridge at dawn may find the figure vanished into mist, leaving only the wind and the whisper of pine needles. Yet hikers who linger too long or attempt the ridge at night describe an ever-present awareness, a sensation of unseen eyes following their every step. Whether sentinel, specter, or shadow, the guardian of Silver Ridge remains a constant, a silent force on the heights above Silver City, watching, waiting, and ensuring that the ridge's secrets remain undisturbed by the living. In the heart of Silver City, an old brick firehouse stands as a relic of bravery, heroism, and tragedy. Its red doors are weathered, the paint peeling, and the brass fixtures dulled with age. For decades, the building has remained mostly unused, a museum of sorts for the town's history of firefighting. Yet for those who linger after dark, the firehouse is anything but silent. Locals whisper of a spirit that remains, a figure dedicated to duty even in death. The fireman's ghost. The legend dates back to a catastrophic fire that swept through Silver City nearly a century ago. Flames devoured buildings, leaped from rooftops, and drove panicked townsfolk into the streets. Amid the chaos, one firefighter distinguished himself above all others. Accounts say he entered the burning buildings repeatedly, rescuing those trapped inside and guiding families to safety. During one desperate rescue, the structure collapsed, trapping him beneath the rubble. Despite the loss of his life, townspeople never forgot his courage. And soon, reports emerged of a presence that lingered in the aftermath. The fireman's ghost is most commonly sensed rather than seen. Visitors to the old firehouse describe a sudden, inexplicable chill in the air, the kind that crawls along the spine and seeps into the chest. It is often accompanied by the faint scent of smoke, sharp and acrid, lingering in hallways where no fire has ever burned. Doors that are securely latched occasionally creak open, lights flicker in the upper windows, and the bell that once summoned firefighters seems to toll faintly in the dead of night, as if calling for a crew that no longer exists. Some witnesses have glimpsed the figure itself. He is described as tall and solid, clad in the traditional firefighter uniform of the era, heavy coat, helmet, and boots streaked with soot. He carries a coiled hose or an axe, moving with purpose through the old station. Observers report that he does not speak, yet his presence conveys urgency, discipline, and unwavering commitment. One former volunteer recounted staying late at the firehouse to sort equipment when he felt a hand on his shoulder. Turning, he saw the spectral firefighter standing nearby, eyes fixed on the far doorway, silently urging him to continue. When he blinked, the figure was gone, leaving only the smell of smoke and the faint clang of the bell. Encounters are not confined to the firehouse itself. Some claim to have seen the fireman's ghost running toward homes engulfed in imagined flames, appearing briefly in doorways or windows, as if checking for safety. He moves quickly, but with precision, his presence both reassuring and terrifying. The townsfolk say that if the ghost sees a structure under threat, whether from fire or the imagination of the living, he will appear, ready to act, a sentinel bound to protect even beyond death. Those who have witnessed him in these moments describe an overwhelming sense of respect and sorrow, as if they are observing someone who understands both duty and sacrifice in ways the living cannot. The firehouse itself seems alive with residual energy. Objects occasionally shift on their own. Hoses uncoiling, helmets tipping to one side, buckets clattering against the floor. Lights flicker despite disconnection from power. Shadows stretch unnaturally along the walls, and the faint clang of the old bell resonates through empty rooms. Some have tried to document the activity with cameras or audio equipment. Videos sometimes capture fleeting, translucent shapes, while microphones pick up low, indistinct murmurs or the echo of footsteps that do not match any visitor's movements. Even skeptics admit that there is something uncanny in the firehouse that defies explanation. Stories from townspeople add to the legend. One elderly resident recalled a night when he was a child, hiding in the alley during a small fire. He heard the rush of boots and a commanding presence guiding his family safely away. Later, he learned that the building he had feared might have been the home of the fireman's ghost himself, patrolling even after death to ensure no one suffered as he once had. Others recount glimpses of a figure carrying a hose or axe, moving toward imagined emergencies, disappearing as suddenly as he appeared, leaving the faint smell of smoke in his wake. The fireman's ghost is seen as both a protector and a reminder. He embodies the ultimate dedication to duty, a figure willing to face danger without hesitation, whose sense of responsibility persists long after life has ended. His appearances inspire awe and fear, a reminder that courage is eternal, but mortality is fragile. Locals advise respect for the old firehouse and caution after dark. Those who mock or challenge the spirit often report unsettling sensations, doors slamming, footsteps echoing, or the bell tolling unexpectedly. It is as if the fireman demands acknowledgement, insisting that the living honor the sacrifices of the past. Even today, the firehouse maintains its aura of vigilance. On stormy nights, when the wind rattles broken windows and distant lightning illuminates the station, witnesses swear they see the fireman's ghost moving among the equipment, checking for readiness, carrying invisible hoses, and answering alarms that no longer sound. The clang of the bell echoes faintly, a signal for an eternal crew that no longer exists. For those who pause to watch or listen, the spirit is not merely a haunting, but a living memory, an embodiment of courage, duty, and sacrifice, frozen in time yet alive in presence. The fireman's ghost of Silver City is more than a legend. He is a sentinel of history, a keeper of memory, and a reminder that heroism does not end with death. His figure in the shadows, his unseen patrols, and the faint smell of smoke all speak of devotion that transcends mortality. Those who encounter him feel the weight of responsibility and the reverence owed to those who gave everything for the lives of others. In the silent, darkened firehouse, the clang of a bell or the fleeting vision of a firefighter still answering an eternal call ensures that courage is never forgotten and that some spirits never rest, dedicated forever to duty above all else. At the center of Silver City lies the old plaza, a place where generations have gathered, celebrated, mourned, and whispered secrets into the wind. By day, it is a vibrant crossroads. Children chase pigeons around the fountain, vendors hawk their wares, and the sunlight sparkles off the cobblestones. Yet when dusk descends and the last echoes of daily life fade, the plaza transforms. The warmth of sunlight is replaced by shadows that gather unnaturally beneath the lampposts, and the laughter and chatter of the day are replaced by a profound stillness, broken only by whispers that seem to circle the fountain and footsteps that echo across empty stones. The plaza is older than most of the buildings that surround it, a foundation upon which the city grew. Its stones have felt the weight of countless feet. Miners returning from long shifts, lovers meeting in secret, soldiers marching in formation, and townsfolk fleeing fires or riots. Some of those who walked the plaza never left it alive, claimed by tragedy, accident, or violence. It is believed that their energy remains, collected in the plaza's very heart, and that as night falls, it returns, released in the form of echoes, shadows, and fleeting presences. Locals speak of the phenomenon with a mixture of reverence and fear. Those who remain in the plaza after dark report sensations that cannot be explained by wind or weather. A sudden chill creeps along the cobblestones, brushing against the ankles of passersby. Shadows lengthen beyond what is natural, crawling across walls and lampposts as if alive. Footsteps fall on the stones in time with no one's movements. Coming from behind, beside, and sometimes above, whispers rise in a language no one can comprehend, carried on a wind that seems to originate from the plaza itself. One night, a traveler stopped in the plaza, drawn by curiosity and the faint glow of an old fountain. At first, all seemed quiet. He walked slowly among the benches, noting the intricate carvings in the stone and the weathered lampposts. Then he heard it, the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoing his own, though, when he turned, no one was there. The footsteps did not stop, matching his pace perfectly. A shiver ran down his spine as the whispers began, soft and urgent, rising and falling around him in patterns that mimicked conversation, laughter, and lament. Looking at the fountain, he noticed figures moving just beneath the water's reflection, shapes formed of mist and shadow, indistinct but undeniably human. He fled into the night, carrying the memory of the plaza's restless energy with him. Some claim that the plaza collects all the city's restless spirits, both joyous and sorrowful. Festivals leave lingering echoes of laughter and music. Tragedies leave shadows of grief and anguish. Every whispered rumor, every argument, every sigh, every cheer becomes part of the plaza's memory, layered like sediment upon its cobblestones. At night, when the living are gone, these echoes surface, replaying in ways that are subtle yet unmistakable. A lamppost may tilt slightly as if nudged by invisible hands. A shadow stretches too long, reaching toward a bench where no one sits. Footsteps circle a fountain, pausing as if listening for voices that will never answer. The fountain itself is central to the plaza's haunted reputation. Water flows over carved stone faces, and on moonless nights, it is said to reflect images not of the present, but of the past. People have glimpsed miners from the city's earliest days, women in long skirts carrying baskets, and children playing in streets, long vanished. Some visitors claim that when they peer into the water too long, they can feel the energy of these figures brush against them, a cold, tingling sensation that runs along their arms and across their neck. The water, they say, remembers, and in its reflection, it offers a window into every life that passed through the plaza. Footsteps are another common sign of the plaza's restless energy. They are often heard when no one is near, circling benches, echoing across open spaces, or rising from side streets. They can be brisk or slow, solitary or in groups, matching the tempo of a parade, a hurried escape, or a casual evening stroll. Sometimes they stop abruptly, leaving an unsettling silence, as though the plaza itself is listening for the reaction of the living. The sounds of footsteps are accompanied by whispers, barely audible at first, then growing louder, forming a tapestry of voices that seems to contain fragments of every story ever told in Silver City. The plaza's haunting is cumulative, a convergence of decades, perhaps centuries, of human emotion and experience. Those who linger too long after midnight often report a heightened awareness, a sense of being observed from every direction at once. Some feel compelled to leave, not out of fear alone, but out of recognition that the plaza is alive in ways the living cannot fully comprehend. Others remain, fascinated and humbled, feeling the weight of memory pressing down upon the stones, the lampposts, and the fountain, understanding that they are standing at the very heart of the city's collective consciousness. Even those who have never heard the stories of Silver City as haunted plaza often feel its presence instinctively. Tourists wandering at dusk report unease, shadows appearing to move in the corner of their vision, and a persistent sense of being watched. Residents know to leave the plaza to its echoes at night, respecting the boundary between the living and the memories that inhabit the stones. Those who stay long enough may hear laughter, sobbing, or distant music rising from invisible corners, reminders that joy and sorrow alike linger here. To stand alone in the plaza after midnight is to stand at the crossroads of every haunting tale Silver City has ever known. It is the convergence point of history and memory, of energy and presence, of the living and the dead. Lampposts cast light upon cobblestones that hold echoes of centuries. Shadows move with intention, and whispers circle the fountain in patterns impossible to follow. The plaza is not merely haunted, it's alive with the energy of every life that has passed through it, a heart that beats in rhythm with the city's collective memory. The heart of Silver City is not a place for the faint of heart. To enter at night is to step into the living memory of the town, to feel the brush of past joys, sorrows, and tragedies on the skin, to hear footsteps and whispers that echo across time. It is a reminder that Silver City is built not only on stone and mortar, but on the accumulated energy of countless lives, each leaving a trace that the plaza remembers and releases night after night. Those who stand there alone after midnight may feel they are not merely in the city, they are within its memory, a witness to the restless heart that never truly sleeps. And so, dear listener, we leave Silver City behind, though its spirits never leave. Its streets, its halls, its bridges, and minds all still echo with the stories of those who came before us. Perhaps they seek remembrance. Perhaps they simply cannot let go. What is certain is this: Silver City is not just a place of history, but of haunting. 25 tales whisper of a world where the past and present walk side by side, separated by only the thinnest veil. So, the next time you find yourself in a quiet town street, or stepping into an old building where the air feels too heavy, listen closely. You may hear the faint toll of a phantom bell, the soft cry of a widow, or footsteps that do not belong to you. Thank you for joining me on this journey through Silver City's haunted soul. Until next time, keep your lights dim, your ears open, and your heart brave, for the spirits are always listening, and sometimes they answer.